Up here. Go. All right, we ended the first session. I said we're going to talk about protecting investment real estate. So that's what we're going to do now. Show you how to put together a plan to protect it. Now, in protecting rental real estate, there's different ways you can go about it. And I want to start off by explaining to you what I know a lot of people that are on this call today are probably doing, and I used to be one of them, on how I would go about putting together a plan to protect my investment real estate. And unfortunately, I used to teach this strategy, and I probably set up, several thousand people with this type of planning. And so assume that you had 4 properties. It used to be when I would work with someone, and as I said, there's people out there as well. We've been thinking about protecting. We'd say, all right, well, if I have 4 properties, and I understand that a limited liability company is one way to protect real estate, how many LLCs do I need? Well, we tend to look at the equity oftentimes. What's at risk? That if I'm sued or one of these properties comes under attack, what can the creditor, what's the maximum they can obtain against me? So if I had 4 properties and each property has $50,000 in equity, then the total amount of equity I have at risk amongst these 4 properties is $200,000, right? So when we're looking at investment real estate, if we take that approach, okay, just looking at the equity, then oftentimes we will adopt strategies, again, like I used to talk about, to say, all right, well, $200,000 equity, maybe that's an acceptable risk of loss. That's my risk tolerance level. I feel comfortable that if something goes wrong, that the most I stand to lose is $200K, because I'm also going to have insurance. So, that's going to be a buffer. Well, that's one way to approach it. And that's, as I stated, the way I used to do it as well, because many times I would look at it on that judgment call. What? 4 properties in one LLC, what is an LLC? What's the cost? And I wouldn't look at it as the investment for the client. And so I'd make these judgment calls and tell them to put 4 properties, no more than 5 in an LLC, and pay attention to the equity, keep it under $300,000 to $400,000. In fact, if you picked up my book, Asset Protection for Real Estate Investors, the first book that I wrote, that's a strategy I talk about in there. Well, as my own investing started to increase, I realized that when it comes to asset protection planning for investment real estate, the equity is not what we're focused on in our investing, right? Why are you investing? Think about why you want to buy investment real estate. Are you buying your investment real estate, that rental property, for the equity, for the appreciation? Maybe some of us do. But I think the vast majority of people, the reason we buy investment real estate is for the income, right? That income that comes in from that property. Let's say that these 4 properties generate $5,000 a year in income. That's $20,000 a year that's being generated from that. That's the motivation for our investing. It's not so much this, it's this right here. So when we think about loss and protecting assets, what are we really protecting? We need to protect the reason for our investing. That is, I want to protect my income. Yes, it's nice to protect the equity, but the equity is not what feeds me. The equity is not what allows me to send my children to college. It's not what's going to allow one of us to quit our W-2 and focus more on the investment side. It's not going to pay for our retirement. It's the income from those assets that create all of these opportunities in our life. And so when we group properties and we don't understand that, what ends up happening is that if something goes wrong, and for example, I've spoke to an individual a few years ago who had put together a strategy like this, right? She hadn't been to one of our events. She'd listened to some other individuals who told her, hey, just create one LLC, put a few properties into it, and then after you get 4 or 5 properties, then create another limited liability company. And so she did that. And then what occurred is that there was a neighbor property over here. And in this house that she had, this rental property, they had a fenced in backyard, and there was a dog that was tied up to that was chained up to a pole. It happened to be a Rottweiler. Well, the neighbor property right here, they had a little Shih Tzu dog, and it climbed under the fence and started attacking the Rottweiler. Well, the Rottweiler, of course, instinctually started attacking, bit back on this little Shih Tzu who thought, obviously the Shih Tzus tend to think they're big dogs, and Shih Tzu wasn't getting the best end of that dog fight. So the person who owned the Shih Tzu, this gal, she decides to climb the fence, jumps in the backyard, grabs her Shih Tzu, and in so doing gets tangled between the two dogs, and the Rottweiler puts a hurt on her. Now, she sues, okay, because she was injured as a result of this person that owned the property, their tenant's dog. And so this person turned the claim over to their insurance carrier. And the insurance carrier informed them that they were not covered for that type of claim because the Rottweiler was one of the excluded animals in the policy as a dangerous animal. And because her tenant had it and she allowed the tenant to live in the property with this dangerous animal, they had no coverage. And so this is the type of things that happens, unfortunately, all the time in this country where people believe that their insurance is there and they have the insurance that's going to protect them, but only to find out when they make the claim that that carrier has excluded that type of claim under a policy. I mean, toxic mold's a big one that happens to a lot of real estate investors. So in this scenario, when this occurs, not only are you standing to risk losing all four properties, $200,000 equity, because they're going to sue the LLC, but you also lose the $20,000 a year in income. And this is what has changed things in our lives, right? Because when you start generating that income that's able to allow you to do more, maybe you're reinvesting it, or as I said, send your kids to school, and that's taken away from you just in the blink of an eye, that can be devastating. Because now we have to fundamentally change our lifestyle and our path because we no longer have that income to rely upon. And so when I understood this, when I started investing, I realized that, hey, this is not the right path forward for investors, that using entities, if there's, we want to use them in a responsible manner, set them up the right way to ensure that my lifestyle, if something were to happen, will not be effective. I want to protect that income as much as possible. So the way we recommend you look at protecting your rental real estate is to use one LLC per property, just like this. Like that. We want to create one LLC per property. Now, by creating one LLC per property, I'm sure you can then realize now where I'm going with this, that if something happens, right, with this one property here, you can look at it and say, well, Clint, if something goes wrong with that one property, you've only lost $50K, which represents the equity portion here in this house. And because they generate $5,000 a year, you've only lost $5,000 in income. That's true. I tend to look at it from the opposite side many times, and I say, well, what did I save? What I saved by having this strategy in place was $150K plus the $15,000 a year in continued income. That's why we recommend we place one house per LLC. And, I've read, posts online from different investment websites. People will say, oh, don't do one LLC per property. It's going to be expensive to maintain taxes. No, because as I showed you earlier, we can create these LLCs as disregarded entities so they don't have to file tax returns. All right. So that's a non-issue. But if you're an investor who hasn't learned these strategies yet, then you may see that as a perceived negative when in reality it doesn't even exist if we set them up right. So one LLC per property, and then we minimize our overall risk of loss just down to this one asset. So often refer to it, in creating these LLCs, I said, you're making an investment into the property. But by putting that LLC in place, you set it up. It's really easy to maintain, minimal maintenance involved with a limited liability company. And what you're doing is you're ensuring that your investments are going to be protected for you and your family for generations to come. So if something does go wrong, we minimize our risk to the greatest extent as possible. So with that in mind, I don't want to leave the impression that if your investment takes off and you're at your property number 35, you're going to be creating your 35th limited liability company, because that's not truly the way it works or the way we approach it. You see, let's assume there are two investors here. Investor number one has 3 properties, and investor number two has 100 properties. Now, who do you think has more to lose, or who has not more to lose? Who needs more protection? Investor number one, put it in the chat. I'd like to know. What do you think? Investor number 1 or 2? Just give me a 1 or a 2. I'm curious who you think. 2, 1, 1, investor number 1, investor number 1. All right, 2s. It seems it's pretty evenly split. Both. Okay, that's good. 2s and 1s. All right. It's back and forth. This is amazing. All right. So a lot of people are saying 1s, and a fair amount are saying number 2 as well. 1, absolutely. Depends on the properties. That's a good point too. Depends on the types of properties you're investing in, both. All right. So the point in doing this is that you're right. Both of them have a lot at risk. All right. But when I look at it, who needs more protection when we're thinking about putting a plan in place? It's investor number 1. And here's the logic behind it. Investor number 1 is getting started. They don't know what they don't know, so they could be making mistakes, all right, with their event, with their investing. So mistake number 1 is that, when you're starting out, you don't know what you don't know, and so you could be prone to make more mistakes. Investor number 2 has been doing it for years, all right, because they have 100 properties, so the chance of them making mistakes has been decreased. But more importantly, we look at the actual portfolios. If investor number 1 has been working hard, saving, and they place all 3 properties in one limited liability company and something goes wrong, their entire investment portfolio is wiped out. All right. So one lawsuit can wipe out their entire investment portfolio. Whereas investor number 2, because they have 100 properties, they don't need to have 100 separate LLCs. They can take on more risk. Because if they set up, let's say 20 LLCs with 5 properties each, so 5 homes inside of 20 LLCs. And going back to my example again of $5,000 in income, each of these LLCs generate $5,000 per property, so that's $25,000 in income per LLC. So they have 20 LLCs throwing off $25K a year, where this person has 1 LLC showing off $15K a year. If a lawsuit happens here, this person loses everything in one lawsuit. So they've lost that income, that entire income, the portfolio they've generated. Whereas investor number 2 loses $25,000 from that one portfolio of 5 properties, but they have 19 other portfolios in different LLCs that is thrown off $25,000 a year. So the impact in the lifestyle of these investors is dramatically different. Number 1 is going to have to change their lifestyle if they've come to rely upon that income. Investor number 2, unless they just spend an inordinate amount of money and just blow money, their lifestyle is not going to change. For example, I said that Toby and I have a portfolio of over 300 properties. We do not have 300 LLCs. Okay. We have 30 LLCs that are set up holding 10 properties each. And if I lost one of those LLCs and we lose 10 properties, it doesn't change where I vacation. It doesn't change what type of wine I'm going to drink when I go to dinner. As you can tell, I do enjoy wine. It's in my office. Never know, right? When you want some wine. So the point is that when you're starting out and you're first getting started, there's this how do I say it? There's just a graph, or we look at it on a scale that as we start ramping up and you get to about 15 properties, then you can readjust your planning. All right. Because you can afford to take on more risk. So when you first start out, risk is the most dangerous to person number 1 because it has the potential to wipe everything out. And so when we're working with new investors, we often tell them, hey, 1 LLC per property. That's what we recommend. And then if you're a more advanced investor and you have 20 properties, we may recommend that you create, 10 LLCs, and we have that discussion. So we want to analyze it. That's why I say it's not a one size fits all. So when we put this together, then we're going to use LLCs. That's how we like to break it out, 1 LLC per property. Now, there are some nuances to your overall planning based upon the type of asset you're investing in and where you're making the investment. I laid out for you because we're dealing with quadrant 4 assets right now, investment real estate, risky assets. I said that we use LLCs. We also use WSTs. We use a series LLC, and we use a land trust. Okay. And I saw during break, somebody mentioned I never heard about land trust before. Okay, so let me just talk about the Series LLC next. So a Series LLC is an entity, it's a limited liability company. I think I used Brown for it. So a Series LLC, you create an LLC, but the state in which you're setting this up in, let's say Texas, they recognize this type of specific form of limited liability company. California does not, Texas does. Florida does not, but Wyoming does, or Delaware does. And there's, like I said, there's 19 states that recognize this. Virginia, Washington, D.C., not a state. But anyways, so you create this LLC and when you're creating it, you file it as a series. So there's a certain type of articles that we have to file to get this company set up. Now, what we do then, once we create this series, it allows us to create off of this series what are referred to as cells. And a cell is equivalent to a separate LLC. But the distinction between a cell and a separate LLC is that with a separate LLC, you have to go through the process of creating your certificate of formation that you file with the state to get the certificate filed. And then you've got this LLC set up. It's recorded with the state. The name has been checked, through that entire process. Whereas with a cell, you don't have to go through that process in most states. There are a few states that require you for a cell to have to go through and basically form a separate LLC. But those states, Texas being one of them, that recognize this type of structure, all you need to do is prepare an operating agreement. And that operating agreement for that new cell, so you come up with a name for it, you prepare an operating agreement that maybe this one here is about 80 pages long. Well, this new cell agreement that you create, it's typically 3 pages long. So I come up with a name, I sign an operating agreement indicating I'm creating a new cell, and there you go. Now you have the equivalent of a limited liability company without having to file it anywhere or pay any state fees to get it set up or to go through the process of creating this large operating agreement. So this is the one you have here. The cell's really simple to set up. And so what the flexibility that we have in doing this is that when we're investing in a state such as Texas that recognizes it. I was just talking to an individual not too long ago who happens to live, this one person lives in New York, they're investing to Texas, and he wanted to set up multiple LLCs in Texas. I said, well, have you considered setting up a series LLC? If we set up a series, it's going to save you on all those state filings, and all we need to do is create separate cells for each of your properties. And in each cell, we'll put one of your rentals like this, and the cells are all owned by the parent. Now, if something goes wrong, that's the only cell that's at risk. Like, well, how does that work if you're not filing it anywhere? So, well, because the state law recognizes this type of structure, so we're able to use it. Granted, if you want to create the multiple LLCs, we can. I'd be happy to go either way with you, but I would recommend we utilize this type of planning here. So series LLCs are valuable tools if you're investing in a state that recognizes it. Maybe Oklahoma or Tennessee, they recognize this type of structure, so we can use it there. We can't use it in Washington or Oregon or Idaho, places that do not recognize it. Now, that's one structure. Another structure you want to look at is a land trust. Now, this tool here, the land trust, it is one of the essential tools as a real estate investor that you're going to have in your toolkit. It's really important. Now, the reason why it's important, number one, it's great for moving property that's encumbered by a mortgage. If you got a property that's encumbered by a mortgage, a land trust is important. If you're investing in Florida, so we've got transfer taxes. It's great for that. If you have a state that has transfer taxes, when you move property into an LLC, then we're going to look at using a land trust. Another option too is if you invest in property subject to. So if you're buying property that's subject to the seller's mortgage, that you're not financing it out and you're going to keep that mortgage in play, you're helping them out of a distressed situation, then you're going to want to use a land trust. So what is a land trust? Well, in every state besides Florida, it's a trust agreement that you create, and it's set up for title holding purposes. You're what we call the beneficiary down here, and you take a piece of property and you deed it into this trust, and my trust then becomes the owner of the real estate on title. I'm the beneficiary of the trust. I own and control everything inside of the trust as that beneficiary. And yes, you have a trustee, and that trustee, the way we set them up, you can use a nominee trustee or maybe a separate LLC, can give you anonymity as well of ownership. So anyways, you take your property, you set up a trust. So the trust is not filed with the Secretary of State. It's a private document. No one has access to this trust document. It's your document. They'll never see it unless you decide to show it to them. Once you create your land trust, all you need to do then is deed the property into the name of the trust. And once it goes into that trust and you become the beneficiary, now you're able to take that asset and put it anywhere you want. I'll show you that in just a moment. But the reason why we use land trusts is, number one, if you have a mortgage on the property and you're concerned that your lender might balk, if you transfer title from your name into an LLC, they might say, well, we're going to make you refinance this loan. Well, if you don't want to deal with a lender in that situation, use a land trust. It gets you around it. If you invest in Florida and you have a mortgage on a piece of property, you take that Florida property, you put it into an LLC, you'll get taxed on that transfer in Florida because they have what are called doc stamps that apply when you move property from your name into an LLC and that property is encumbered. Well, if you put it into a land trust, you don't have that issue in Florida. So that's a way around it. If you're buying property subject to and you don't want the bank to know that there's been a property transfer from seller's name to your name, then put it into a land trust and they won't discover that. You can mask that fact that because the trust owns it on title, they don't see your name, they don't see an LLC, it doesn't create any alarm, so the lender won't accelerate. And the fact that you can set these things up so you have complete anonymity of ownership. If somebody looks at title to this property, they see the trust name, they don't see your name. So there's a lot of compelling reasons why. Now, what we do with these things then, investors use these all the time. We put the property into the trust, and then you're the beneficiary. Then you take your beneficial interest and you'll put it into a limited liability company. Now, the reason this step is important, if you're going to use land trust, is because outside the state of Florida, if something happens with the trust and there's an issue with the property, then they come after the beneficiary. Florida's the one exception. In Florida, land trusts provide you asset protection like an LLC. That's the only state. So if I set this up in Tennessee, my trust, we do this a lot for Tennessee investors. We set up a trust, then we take their trust and we put it inside of their limited liability company. So they avoid transfer taxes, they avoid lender acceleration problems, they get the asset protection by having that LLC listed as the beneficiary. So in some situations, you may find wherever you're investing, again, we're talking about land trusts here, you may create a structure where your property is held in the name of a trust, and that trust is owned by a limited liability company, and you're down here. Now, if you're wondering about tax returns, again, no tax returns. If you have to file a tax return for an entity, I will tell you when a tax return has to be filed. So I don't want that to permeate our thinking here. Oh, we just set a trust and an LLC. That means 2 tax returns. 0 tax returns have to be filed with this structure. It's great. We use these things all the time. So land trusts are exceptional tools. Now, do not take from this that you want to do this. I'm going to put 4 land trusts in one LLC, because outside the state of Florida, if you did this and something went wrong, so there are people, we run into investors like this all the time, that are unprotected. They think they're protected. Like what you're learning today is how to create a protected structure for yourself. People will put multiple land trusts in one LLC and think, all right, well, it's good. I've got the protection. But in reality, if something happens here, they come down to the LLC and they can take these trusts. So we have to stick to the planning, one LLC per trust or one LLC per property. Now, I've talked about limited liability companies. I showed you what a series LLC works. And I told you that you can only use series LLCs in a state that recognizes them. I've talked about land trusts. They're an important tool as well. The last thing I want to cover on investment real estate, the tool that you may use, is what is referred to as a Wyoming statutory trust. Now, the thing about this tool is limited in its application. If you live in California and you're investing either in California or outside of California, you're using this tool in your plan. If you live outside of California, but you invest into California, you may be using this tool in your plan. Why? Because when you invest in California or you live in California, you own an interest in an LLC. Every LLC you set up, California charges $800 per LLC. So if I own 3 properties in California and you followed this structuring right here, that structure has an annual fee to maintain it of $2,400 a year because each LLC has to pay $800, right? Now, these were California properties, of course. If, on the other hand, you're a California resident and you own 3 LLCs, and each of these LLCs are set up in, say, Oklahoma, then California asserts that because you're a member in the LLC, each of them has to pay $800 a year because you live in California. So this isn't uncommon. A lot of people who invest in California or live in California they fall into this issue where they have to make a huge investment for their asset protection. Because you're here today, you're going to learn that that investment is no longer needed. That you can use a tool now in your overall planning that will eliminate your $800 a year. And that tool is a statutory trust, because when you set up a statutory trust, it is not subject to the $800 a year. And a statutory trust is a business trust. So we file it in Wyoming just like we would a limited liability company. So we set up the trust, and the trust will own your California real estate. Just like this. So here's my WST and holds my California property, and you can be the beneficiary of that trust. And now you have asset protection. If something goes wrong, unlike a land trust, this offers asset protection because it's a business trust. But because of the fact it's a business trust, it's not subject to the $800. So we're able to take our California real estate now, use this type of planning, but not incur this type of annual fee for the investing. So for those of you that are investing in California, or you live in California, you're investing outside the state, then when you're working with your planner, this is the thing you need. These are the questions you need to be asking. Hey, do I have to pay $800 for this? All right, how do I get around it? And the answer is they should be providing you. Either you use land trust to Wyoming LLCs or statutory trust, land trust or statutory trust. That's how you're going to get around the fees. Same thing if you invest in Tennessee. We have problems there that you can be subject to franchise taxes. Well, we can show you. And what I would tell you is that when you're talking to people, say, well, how do I get around that? I don't want to pay the franchise tax, right? You can do it when you're using trust. So this is key. This is how we separate out the investors, as I stated, they get the type of protection they're seeking, and also get it so that it's not going to require a huge investment to maintain. I think you get the best of both worlds now. So it's just understanding the different structures that are out there. Now, the thing about this type of planning that I just shared with you, I've been talking about it in the context of owning it in our own name, but it doesn't change. If you decide to invest in a self-directed IRA, then you're going to do the exact same thing with your self-directed IRA or solo 401k. You're going to hold your real estate in either trusts or LLCs that are owned by your IRA. You're going to separate them out just like this. Okay, so the same planning will take place with a self-directed IRA if you want to invest with your retirement accounts as we would if we're investing in our own name. So whenever you saw me drawing a person here, that person can also be, if you're working with solos or IRAs, it could also be a self-directed IRA. Either one, they're interchangeable. So I want you to think of it in terms of planning. We should be looking at going, all right, it doesn't need to be an individual. It could be an entity that owns these types of entities as well. Many times people hear this, and there's a lot of people out there that have heard that IRAs offer asset protection or 401ks offer asset protection. Well, when people talk about that, many times professionals do not clarify what they're referring to. What they're referring to is that the asset protection means if you get sued personally, they can't take your IRA or your 401k. Now, I will tell you that your IRAs, if you have an IRA and you live, and there's about 10 states, California being one of them, if you get sued personally, they can take your IRA from you. It's not protected in that state, and a handful of others. But when it comes to asset protection, no one talks about what happens on the inside. And if you're going to invest this route, you want to make sure that the assets held inside of your retirement account are uber protected, because it takes a long time to build up a retirement account. And the last thing you need to go through is this, right? That your IRA is now being sued. And so this is a complaint that one of our clients received. Their IRA was being sued because Kathy Harris, who's represented by this law firm here, was a guest at the property at such and such that is owned by the IRA, owned in an IRA. And when this client called in, happens to be a platinum client of Anderson's, called in to talk to an attorney. When we spoke to him, what came out of this is found out that he has a self-directed IRA. It said he has a self-directed IRA, and it owned 14 homes directly in the IRA's name. And of course, we're a bit baffled by that. We said, well, you've been working with us, and we're not sure what happened here in the communication. You know, you need to get these assets protected. Now your IRA is being sued, and all 14 homes are at risk because they're suing the IRA. Not only are the 14 homes at risk, all the other cash that's inside of there. And I get it. I mean, for a lot of people, it happens. Life gets in the way of your planning, and you put off what you should be doing today because other things get in front of that. And it just happens. So it's not a judgment call. But unfortunately, when this happened for this client who said, oh, yeah, I meant to get to it, it's too late now. Now our hands are tied, and we could not come in and put together LLCs to protect them, because you're planning. What we're talking about today, this needs to be in place before a lawsuit develops. I spoke to a gentleman just the other days. We have a titanium client. We call them titanium clients. I'll explain a little bit later, but he had a house burned down, and he wanted to talk to me about it. So we set up a phone call, and we were discussing it. He's like, yeah, this house burned down, rental property, and I'm extremely nervous. You know, they may come after me. And he goes, what do you think? And I said, listen, I know the first one, it's uncomfortable, but I'm on my third. Okay. And so it gets a little easier as these things keep burning down. He said, what the hell have you been doing that created all your houses to burn down? I said, nothing. That's the most important thing here. I don't do any of my own work. But the point is that, you know, he's asking, he goes, what can we do now to give myself even greater protection? And I said, well, there's nothing we can do now. You're already protected. It's only that, because we set up a plan for him with one LLC per property. I said, had it not been that way, there's nothing I could have done. He said, so you're fine. You're in a great position. That's the position you want to be in when it comes to planning. So IRAs can be sued as well. And so we want to make sure that if you're doing that, you're protected. Now, the thing about planning, okay, is that when you're putting together plans to protect your assets, we're talking about it in terms of if a lawsuit develops. Now, we've helped out hundreds of clients that have been involved in lawsuits in protecting their affairs and explaining to them, hey, this is what's going to happen. You're in a great position. They're not going to come after you and get after your assets, and this is going to settle out. And it does. It always works out that way. The thing about it though is what I want to do is I want to be in a situation where if someone looks at me, they don't even want to sue me. As I talked about earlier, I want to be that person that appears to own nothing, that when an asset search is run, you can't find anything in my name. And so in order to do that, there's a strategy you can implement. You can put in place where when you're creating these structures, none of them are going to point back to you. There's a lot of people that set up LLCs, you know, they go to the legal dooms of the world, they go to their attorneys and they set up these LLCs and everything points right back to them. And so it's a simple matter of jumping on a Secretary of State's website or going to opencorporates.com, typing in their name, and I can find out every entity that they're associated with. And so then I know that they have a lot of business activity going on. They have a lot of assets. And so they go up in my estimation of who I want to bring that case against. What we like to do is create plans. And if you're going to do this, you're going to be creating a plan. This is the type of stuff you want to be telling people is, hey, I want to make sure that when I create this entity, that it doesn't point back to me, that I don't want my name on it. Because if my name's associated with in any way, then if somebody comes after me or they're thinking about suing me, they're going to be able to figure out where I live and they'll be able to serve me. Like that person that lived in California, he owned that property in an entity that pointed right back to him. So the attorney in Florida was able to find him and go after him. Well, there's ways to do this where that will never happen when you set it up with anonymity. So here's how we do it. Here's how you become invisible to creditors. So to show you how you become invisible, I first need to show you how LLCs are set up and how we fix this. So if you create an LLC, you have to come up with the name, of course, for your company. So it doesn't matter what that name is. Then you need to have a business address. Right? So if you don't have a business address, many times we use our home address here. That's a mistake because right now you've just shown someone where you reside. And let's face it, there are crazies out there. And they get upset with maybe your business. They feel that they were slighted in your business or they're a disgruntled tenant. You think it's beyond some of these crazies to show up at your house? I think not. I spoke to someone a couple of weeks ago where he said that in his business, a person was upset with the service they received and they went to the house and they started beating on the door and screaming at them as the owners. And the guy was really scared. It shook his wife to the core that this person would show up at their house. You don't want that to happen. Keep this information off public records. So business address is one. The other thing you have to have is what's called an RA, a registered agent. And that is someone that has a physical presence in the state where the entity is set up. So for example, if I'm setting up an Indiana limited liability company, I need to have somebody in Indiana with a physical address there to be my RA. I could not be a registered agent for an Indiana LLC if I live in Washington. I'd have to use a person or a company to do that. So if it's you and your LLC, oftentimes people put their own names. I'm going to put your name here. Your name will go down there. Then the entity, to set up an entity, many states want to know who are the members or managers of the LLC. Because it's your LLC, your name is going to get listed when you create it. Now, what do I mean by members or managers? I want you to understand that when you create a limited liability company, there's two types you can create. Okay, one is called a manager-managed LLC, and the other one's a member-managed LLC. So whenever you're setting up an LLC, this is a question you need to ask someone. Is this a member-managed LLC you're creating for me or a manager-managed LLC? You got to write that down. That's a question you need to ask because the distinction is really important in creating your overall plan. So in a manager-managed LLC, the LLC is going to be controlled by a manager. More than one. You can have multiple managers involved in this limited liability company. So they have all the control over how that company operates. Now, if you choose a manager-managed LLC, then we will list the manager's name on the filing with the Secretary of State. If instead you choose a member-managed LLC, that is where the members, and members equal owners of the LLC, then they will control it. So there will not be a management level here. All the members collectively control that company. So those are the two different types of companies you create. So it's not unusual for many people to create member-managed LLCs or manager-managed LLCs and not understand the implication that their name is now going to be listed on the Secretary of State's website. So if somebody looks at that LLC, they see them and they know how to find them. And then the last portion that you have to list out here is what's called the organizer. Now, the organizer is the person who submits the articles for filing to get their LLC set up. And so if you're creating your own limited liability company, that's going to be your name and address. So what does this mean then when we create companies, traditional companies? It allows people then to look us up and find us. For example, here's a situation right here. This client sent me an email, states, hey, when they served me with the small claims court summons, they used my home address. So she got served at home. And she says, I'm now getting mail addressed to my LLC at our house. Is that because of the small claims suit? I've never used my home address on any filing with the state. I'm just trying to figure out what else I need to do. So this client set up her own limited liability company before she started working with us. And unfortunately, we can't unring this bell. Once your information's out there, it's forever in the public record. So when she created the LLC, since she did it herself, she put her name and address down as the organizer. So all this creditor needed to do was just pull up the articles of organization that she used to file her LLC, then went and served her personally at her house. Now you may be wondering, well, if they're against the LLC, why are they serving her personally? Because they want to create chaos in your life. So when we're planning, we don't want someone to be able to figure out where we live or who the owners are, because immediately what they're going to want to do is create chaos and stress in your personal life. So they'll name you typically as a defendant. Seen it happen so many times. Even though the LLC owns a property, people say, well, why are they naming me as a defendant? I don't even own the asset. It's owned in an LLC. Because they can, because they know what type of stress that will bring to bear. So we want to stop that, right? I think we can, when we're thinking about this, and we agree, hey, if we could set up a limited liability company and create structures that besides our attorney, our CPA, and our family members know that we have those, don't you think that would be a preferred situation? Then anybody with access to a computer can find out who owns a company. So how do we do that? Well, the way we do that to create anonymity is we create that Wyoming LLC, create a Wyoming LLC. Just like I told you earlier, it provides anonymity. So with a Wyoming LLC, the way it works is that you have to come up with a name for the company. You have to have a registered agent. And so when we create a Wyoming LLC, it's going to be Anderson. We serve as a registered agent for the Wyoming LLCs. In fact, we serve as a registered agent in all 50 states, so our clients' information is never disclosed. And then you have to have a business address in Wyoming. So we provide a business address. So if you're going to set one up, a Wyoming LLC, I see these questions a lot on my YouTube channel. People will say, well, I set up a Wyoming LLC and they use my home address in Montana on the LLC. Where's the anonymity? Well, that's a problem. When you set it up, the person you use to set it up they don't have an address for you that you can use to forward mail onto you, then that's why they had to use your personal address. So you want to make sure you're not using any of your personal information on these companies. And then they want to know who is the organizer of the company. And of course, if you're setting it up yourself, it's going to be you. But when you use a company like Anderson or somebody else to set it up, we're going to put Anderson down. But the person who creates the company, their information will be listed. So what's missing here? The members or managers, their information is not disclosed because Wyoming doesn't collect it. So when you set up a Wyoming limited liability company, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to set this entity up as a manager managed LLC. So your Wyoming company will be manager managed. Write that down. I'm going to create a Wyoming LLC. It's going to be a manager managed LLC. So you're going to be the manager. If you're married, your spouse will be on there as well. And so this is something, just take a little sidetrack here. This question comes up a lot. Hey, if I'm married, My spouse isn't participating in the business. Do I put my spouse on my Wyoming LLC or my LLC? Yes, you do. And the reason why you want to do that is because if something happens to you, you want to make sure your spouse is in a position to take over control of those accounts and run that company. Even if they're not doing anything today, something happens to you, they got to take over that control tomorrow. And so if you don't have them on there, that can create problems. So you put your spouse on there. Both of you will be members as well in that LLC. Now, if somebody looks at this one, let's say we call this Snow Tiger LLC. If somebody went to Wyoming and they typed in Snow Tiger LLC, nothing points to you because none of your information is collected by the state when we set it up in this manner. Now, if they ran your name, because I could just type in your name and I ran your name through the Secretary of State, none of it's going to point to you. No one will know that you have this. So now once we have this structure in place, this Wyoming LLC in place, here's what we start doing. This is how the planning works. You create your Wyoming LLC here. You're the managers of it and you're the members. Now, when you create your Indiana LLC up here, well, again, you don't want to do this on your own. You want to have someone else do it. So your name's not going to appear anywhere. You have to have a name there for it, of course. You have to have an RA. It's not going to be you. So it's going to be someone else. Let's just say Anderson here. You have to have a business address. Okay. So one of the things that we provide, and there's other people that do as well, they provide a business address for your LLC. You want to make sure you're not using your home address. You want to get a business address there for that company. So that's submitted to the state. So nothing tracks back to you. Then you have to decide whether or not this is going to be a member managed or a manager managed LLC. This is key. This is the linchpin, what puts all this together that makes this thing so sticky, which prevents people from finding out, your tenants knowing that you have this structure in place. All right. You set this thing up as a member managed LLC. So the member, you're going to list Snow Tiger. That's what gets listed on the Secretary of State's website, Snow Tiger. So what happens, let's say this guy up here was Heat Miser LLC, and you've got a property inside of there. And now there's this tenant who, here's a perfect example. Talking to someone, an investor not too long ago, and they told me this situation occurred where a DoorDash delivery driver came to the property to deliver food and slipped on the sidewalk, fell. Okay, not in the wintertime, just in the normal sunny day. Said he fell on the sidewalk and cracked his face and was going to sue. He sued him, actually. I'm not going to, did sue him for the injuries he sustained. Now, let's say that happens, all right? This person, this DoorDash delivery driver wants to sue, and they're looking at the LLC, and they pull up the LLC name, he and his attorney. Well, who owns this LLC? Well, they look at Heat Miser LLC. It's going to say that it's owned by Snow Tiger Limited Liability Company, a Wyoming LLC. So then I guarantee you the attorney will then go to the Wyoming Secretary of State's website. Well, who owns Snow Tiger? It's going to give them zero information because nothing points back to you. Your name's not listed anywhere because Wyoming doesn't collect that info. So by looking at this, it points them here. And the way that works is because we created a member managed LLC. So here's the things you need to write down. Wyoming LLC, manager managed. Every other LLC that points to that, member managed LLC, right? So that's how we're creating our anonymity on that. So then if somebody's looking, they're not going to be able to know that you're involved with that. So the disgruntled tenants, things like that, they're not going to come to your personal residence. You don't have that fear because you're not associated with those companies. Now, here's the thing about the planning that we've been discussing. I told you earlier, it's a three-legged stool approach: asset protection, tax, and business. Now, when we're creating a plan for our investments, wouldn't we want to have all three of these benefits, right? There's a lot of people that, as I said earlier, CPAs and attorneys that set up structures, and they only focus on one leg because that is their expertise. Now, here at Anderson, as I say, we do things a little differently. We want to make sure that there's multiple benefits that come from creating entities, because I've seen personally that when you have a good plan in place, right, you can actually get more done. You can look better to lenders. You can get more money. You can look better to the IRS. You can reduce your risk of audit. And I've seen the opposite happen where we don't set things up right. And in those situations, you're not getting the full benefits that entities can provide. You're increasing your risk of audit. You're dealing with those types of hassles. And so that can then lead people to say, hey, it's not even worth having structures. So when we create structures, let's say you had 3 properties. Your structure may look something like this. 3 LLCs, all owned by one Wyoming LLC. Each of these LLCs owning a piece of property. Now, these LLCs up top, the red boxes, I'm going to put a D above them. That means they're disregarded. They do not have to file tax returns. You're down here. You own the Wyoming LLC. Now, because they're all flow through, the tax benefits, this leg right here, Toby's going to teach you this afternoon. Every tax strategy he's teaching you, you're going to be able to collect upon down here at the individual level with this type of structure. So you're going to get all the benefits of owning rental real estate, but by using entities to maximize your tax benefits. That's all going to flow down to you. So you got 2 of those legs right here with the structure. Now the third leg, the business planning leg. Now this leg is uncommon for people to recognize its importance. And I used to be one of those as well until I started investing and I lost out on a deal. And I lost out on the deal because of the way my tax returns looked. And I realized, hey, I can do this better. So after I did a lot of research into it and I talked to other investors that were more experienced, and this was years ago. Okay, so we're going back about 16 years now. What I screwed up is when I created my Wyoming LLC, I also made it a disregarded entity. So I had 4 entities and I was not filing a single tax return. Well, here's the problem. When I filed my 1040, all your real estate activity shows up on Schedule E. Schedule E on your 1040. And so in this type of structure where they're all disregarded, it looks as if I own the properties in my own name. And so what happened was I would have 3 properties listed out on my Schedule E, and it's had all my income and expenses associated with these properties all listed here. And let's say that all those properties combined, these 3 properties combined, generated $45,000 a year in income. Great. So I got $45,000 a year in income coming in from my rental. When I went in to get a loan, right, I'm applying for this loan to buy this commercial space, and I needed that income to qualify because my W-2 wasn't sufficient. And so I was counting on having this income. I get declined. And the reason I get declined is because the underwriter would not allow me to utilize the full $45,000. They held back 25% of that income. So they said basically 10,000 of that 45K doesn't count. You only have $35,000 in rental income. I said, that's BS. You guys can see my tax return. I made $45K. And they said, we know what you made, but for underwriting purposes, we cannot count all of that income because Freddie and Fannie will not allow us to do that because we're going to sell these notes. See, that's the other thing about real estate investing. When you get involved with it, when you're working with professionals, you want to make sure that they have experience in setting up structures for real estate investors to make sure that when it comes to lending, that it makes you look attractive to the lenders, that you can utilize, capture all of the income. And that's one of the questions you should be asking people. Say, hey, will this structure give me 100% of my rental income for purposes of borrowing? And if the answer, if they don't know, then that's not the person you should be working, because then you may be put into a structure that's going to hurt you rather than help you when you go to borrow. I was hurt because of the way I structured this. But then I realized after I started digging into it and talking to other people, hey, this is easily fixed. And so what I had to do was change this entity here to a partnership. So it did have to file a 1065 tax return. So I did have to file an additional return, but by filing that tax return for this entity, it changed where the real estate income hit my 1040. So instead of listing out all the properties on Schedule E, page 1, because this is where it goes, it went on the second page. We call it page 2. On page 2, all you list is a line item. And said K1 from the entity, $45,000 in income. Now, when I went in to apply for a loan, because I lost this deal gone, didn't make enough money. When I go in to apply for a loan, now the way my 1040 reads, there is no longer any properties listed over here. All of it came through a K1 and was listed here as a line item, 45K in income. When I went in to apply for that loan, and afterwards, all of this income, I got 100% of it because it's still the same income, but where it appears on a tax return changes how the underwriter utilizes that for qualification purposes for borrowing. You see, a light went off, and it took me to that third leg where I hadn't been before because I didn't realize it existed. That by creating entities, they can help you do more with your investing because you can get more income added back in for purposes of borrowing. And so once I discovered that, and we started talking about this and teaching our clients, hey, we don't want to set these up as disregarded. If you think you're going to be borrowing, then you want this Wyoming LLC treated as a partnership for federal tax purposes. It can help you borrow, not to mention it reduces your risk of audit as well. There's another ancillary benefit that comes from this. You see, when we create structures, right, we want to start just checking off the boxes. Okay, I want to make sure I have asset protection, check. I want to make sure I get tax planning, check. I want to make sure I can borrow, check. And I want to make sure that the IRS stays out of my business. Check, check, check. That's what that's going to give you. And the reason you're wondering, well, why is it that that's going to protect you from audit? It has to do with people who are qualified to audit tax returns, partnership returns. So at Anderson, we have some former IRS attorneys that work with us in Anderson. And one of the things that every single IRS attorney I've ever talked to that's no longer working with them has parroted and told me. They said, if you put 100 auditors in a room, of those 100 auditors, 3 are qualified to handle corporate returns and partnership returns. So S corporations, C corporations, and partnerships. 97 of them are only allowed to audit 1040s. So as a real estate investor, I'm doing a lot with my real estate to reduce my income, taxable income down. The strategies Toby's going to be talking about. When that hits a 1065, this return right here, likelihood of being audited, so small. But when it hits a 1040, you got 97 people looking at that. Now, if they don't understand real estate, maybe you're getting pulled for audit. So that's what we're looking at here as well. We're putting together plans. And you should be asking those questions of the people that you're working with. Hey, are you creating a plan that's also going to reduce my risk of audit? If so, how is it going to reduce that risk? Last thing I would leave on this subject matter, I saw there's some people from Canada. If you're from Canada and you're investing in the United States, whenever I say limited liability company, change that to limited partnership. Okay, if you're investing from Canada in the US, you have to use limited partnerships. We set them up all the time. Disregarded limited partnerships. The reason we do that is because the CRA will double tax you on LLCs. So we use LPs for our Canadian friends that want to invest down here in the States. Now, the anonymity side, how does that work in keeping your information private? Well, check this one out. Here's an email where one of our assistants received from an individual. Said, hi, my name is Tony Henry with so-and-so, and I've researched the owner of Cardinal Drive, Springfield, Missouri, Golden Key Properties, Series LLC, Jamaica Way, and have been led to contact you as the organizer. You see, we set up this LLC for this individual. We organized it as Anderson. And that LLC was owned by Wyoming LLC. So there was no information about the owners of the company. And so this person reached out to Anderson to try to find out who the owners were. And then went on to say, the articles of organization don't list anything, that we can figure out who's involved here. We're buying the adjoining duplex, and we want to talk to the owners of the LLC to see if, they want to help us or come up with a joint sharing agreement or whatever for expenses. So when we receive these types of emails, they come in all the time, or letters, we reach out to our clients. because our clients aren't going to receive this because no one knows how to reach them. And we tell them, hey, here's what we got. We got this letter. Somebody's trying to reach you. Do you want to respond to them, or do you want us to respond on your behalf? Now, why would they want us to respond on their behalf? Well, the reason why they might want us to respond on their behalf is because how do we know that this person who's trying to reach out to our client is actually an investor who's buying the adjoining property? You know, it could be a ruse by an attorney who is representing the tenant and is just trying to figure out who the owner is, because that's going to maybe possibly make a determination if they bring suit or not, or how much they're going to aggressively pursue it if they think that person has deep pockets. So they're trying to get through the shield, and they're using the ruse as, oh, I'm going to, another investor who's thinking about buying the property next door. So we can ferret that out. That's what an anonymity shield should be doing for you. It should be designed around that. And then when you have those tax planning things that I was talking about with partnerships, then it can really take it to another level, as you see here, where this client sent me an email after he came to one of my events, and he said, hey, you know, the underwriters of the two different lenders we've approached each dragged their feet for 3 months for indicating the debt to income ratio was not in conformance. It appears they do not know how to value Schedule E rental properties. You see, he recognized that as well, that what he just stated, the DTI, is that he couldn't qualify for the loan because the underwriters were focusing on the wrong numbers and we're all screwed up. And unfortunately for him, it came down to what I described, that it needed to be on page 2 rather than page 1. So these are real world implications. When you set them up in a certain way, that it can help you, get the deals done that you're looking to do by having these structures there. So this is how we protect investment rental real estate. We're using LLCs, Wyoming Statutory Trust. We're using them in a very specific manner. To do that, commercial real estate, it's going to be similar on how we set up commercial real estate. But when you're looking to start flipping property or wholesaling, then we're going to use a different type of structure. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you that strategy next. But before we get there, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Guys, I'll see you back in 10 minutes.
is Toby Mathis with Anderson Business Advisors, and I have one of our clients on. What would you tell somebody that's first dealing with Anderson?
With Anderson, you get exceptional professionals that are also real people, and they don't just treat you like you're a client; they treat you like you're a friend.
You're not law school graduates that just do this to make money. You actually do what we do. And you've been there, done that, and you offer a lot more credibility than a lot of other organizations that don't do that. And that gives us a sense of comfort too, and confidence as well. Like I said before, when we ask a question, we know we're going to get an answer from experience, not textbook.
I'd like to start off, just if you could tell the individuals that are watching this video right now, why did you first come to Anderson?
Honestly, I came to Anderson once with some great meetings that we had with some real estate professionals out there. And once I started learning a little bit about the process and how necessary for asset protection, especially as I started getting into properties, to me, it was a no-brainer. Honestly, I could learn this stuff to a certain degree, but that's what, honestly, you guys were there for, the experts. So it was a no-brainer. I needed that help to be able to progress further.
We had bought our house in San Francisco, and it was a total fixer-upper. We, built an in-law apartment that we rented out, getting San Francisco rents for. What I didn't realize is how much help I would need from a legal and tax perspective. And you guys, through all of the training courses and talking to Seth, my advisor, he's given us real world feedback on things that at that point were just completely theoretical to me.
What do you think the biggest benefit of partnering with Anderson has been for you?
We feel a lot more comfortable sleeping at night, knowing that we're well protected.
Yeah, asking questions on Platinum is really great because you can get information back pretty quickly. I've had all of my necessary documents set up, so revocable living trust, pour-over will. I've had a corporation and some LLCs set up. I use the bookkeeping services and the tax services.
I would definitely steer them towards Anderson. I'll make a couple of points. I think the package they have together for entity structure implementation and asset protection, that's, I think, class apart from everybody else.
What would you say then is one of the best things about Anderson that sets us apart from other attorneys you work with?
By far, it's Anderson having a one-stop shop. So, on that same point that you're making, no longer do I need to interview or shop around for entity creation and advice, legal services, tax prep, bookkeeping services, which would take a lot of time and a lot of money on an individual basis. It's all under one roof, and I think that's what really attracted me to you guys to begin with.
You guys have everything in-house. You have an expert in each field. You've got the attorneys, the tax, and the bookkeeping. And it's a lot less paperwork, having to middleman everything again.
The responsiveness, the access, the kind of the approachability, I think, is really one of the best features that you guys have. I never feel worried or that I'm worried about spending too much money or that it's a hassle or anything. To just reach out and ask a question, you answer right away. It's the answer I'm looking for, and it's always professional, well thought through, and accessible. And I couldn't really ask for more.
All right, welcome back. We know the drill now. Just got to pull up my screen. Broadcast. Come back. Hope you had a lot to think about over the break about what I've been covering and how that could work out in your personal planning. I saw there's some great questions coming up on the Q&A. During the break, look at those questions. Somebody said, hey, you know what, I'm going to start a business in new construction home building. Can Anderson help me? Yeah, even though we're talking about asset protection, I'm talking about investment real estate. We work with small business owners. People are looking to go out there and start a new business. One of the things we're going to help you focus on in starting that business is analyzing the entities that are most appropriate for the type of business you're getting involved with and making sure that we're minimizing the liability for that business as well. Because a lot of business owners I found over the years, they will start a business and it's driven from the tax side. And that makes sense, right? You don't want to be overburdened in taxes on your business because that's going to, retard the growth of that business because it doesn't have the fuel that it needs, the income to keep growing. But then things slip through the cracks and you end up finding assets start getting accumulated inside of that business that should never be there. So that's what we can do as well with the planning. So just keep in mind, these are concepts, and these concepts can apply across different categories of investing and business building. Now, before I talk about flipping, I just thought about something during the break about lease options. If you're thinking about getting involved in strategies where you don't even own property, because you might be thinking to yourself right now, well, Clint's only been talking about real estate that I own, but I don't own anything yet. And there's other strategies out there that can help me when it comes to generating income so I can go out and start buying real estate. And lease option is one of those types of strategies where you may be considering finding a property and you hook this property up under a lease, and then you turn around and you sublease the property to another individual. This could be short-term rental arbitrage. That's another strategy here rather than a long-term lease option like this. So in that case, we see this a lot. There are a lot of people out there that we run into who will take this lease on in their own name and then sublease it out to this tenant over here, again, in their own name, because they don't own the property. Well, all the concerns that I brought up earlier as to why you need entities, asset protection, if something goes wrong, those apply. Contract claims, right? Those also apply in this context, because if this is the property owner over here and I'm leasing this property from her and it's in my own name, I just signed a contract with her stating that I agree to lease it out for 1 year or 2 years at, say, $1,800 a month. And then I'm subleasing it out to someone over here. And again, my name's going on the agreement. So they have a lease agreement with me personally for this property. And they're going to pay me $2,500 a month for this property. So I'm hoping that I'm making that difference of $700 a month between what I have to pay versus what I'm leasing it out at. And then I'm going to take that $700 and I'm going to save that up and use that as the down payment for my first property. Okay. The problem that these other investors can run into with this type of planning is that if this person is injured, they're going to come after you and sue you. So now you're on the hook there from a liability standpoint. From a contract standpoint, let's say they quit paying and they don't pay, and so you have to evict them, and so you're stuck there. So you're bringing in zero income from this, but this person over here still wants their $1,800 a month. You got to have that going. And if you don't pay that, then they turn around and sue you and they bring an unlawful detainer against you. So all of this can snowball up onto us. That is why when you're starting out in real estate, even if you don't own assets, you still need protection. And so we would set up a limited liability company for you. And that option right here, that lease, that's with the LLC. That's not with Clint. Right? I want to keep myself insulated from that liability. Same with the tenant. That's with the LLC. It's not with me individually. So you got to make sure that you're protecting your interests whenever you're going out there. So don't fall or look at this and say, well, this doesn't apply to me yet because I'm not owning property. No, it's applying to you. If you're going to get into any type of contracts where you sign agreements with people, that brings liability. That's why, I saw a question about, I have a brokerage account. What should I do with that? Remember, that's a quadrant 2 asset. If you have stocks and you're going to trade stocks, you need a Wyoming LLC for those stocks. Why am I putting it there? Because if anything happens on the outside, involved in car accidents, things of that nature, contract lease claims that are brought against me, then my brokerage account is not at risk. So that's what we're focusing on with this planning. There's many different facets of where asset protection can come to protect you. All right. So if we're going to wholesale or flip real estate, then in that case, what we're going to recommend you create is either an LLC or an Inc., but it's going to be treated as a C or S. So LLC or Inc., treated as a C or an S corporation. So if you want to get involved in wholesaling, And actually, if you're going to start a different type of business, you're going to be a contractor, construction. Again, an LLC or an Inc. treated as a C or an S, active business here. Quadrant 3 assets, right? That's what we talked about earlier. So, wholesaling, you'll run that activity directly out of your company. If you're going to wholesale real estate, where you go out, you tie a property up under contract, and then you turn around, you find an investor who will step into your shoes and will pay you for that agreement, that goes direct, that income flows directly to your company from the investor. And so I have the company here that I own and control, and so it's making the money for me. Now, that's pretty straightforward. That's how you'd run your wholesaling business. But when you're flipping, it's completely different. So if you're flipping real estate, then you do not want to flip in this entity here. If you can avoid it, do not flip in your court. Now, maybe you have to do 1 or 2 deals in there to get started. I understand that. But understand that every time you flip a property, you have liability with that sale of that property. Depending on the statute of limitations, it could be 3 years, maybe it's even 6 years that could come back against you. So we want to make sure that we're recognizing that and we're putting in place structures that will minimize that. Because if you think about it, how do you think it would affect your investing if you're out there and you're on your next deal and all of a sudden you get sued? Is that going to help or hurt? I think we would agree it's probably going to hurt our investing in our business to have to deal with a lawsuit when we're already spending cash to rehab a property. So when I'm investing, and we used to flip property, Toby and I did, we started out, actually we still flip. We started out flipping in the Las Vegas market in 2010, and we did that for a few years, and then that quit working out for us there, the type of investing flips we were doing, and now we flip in North Carolina. And we recognize, as do the clients that we work with, that liability is associated every time you sell a property. So what we like to do is set up LLCs as follows. Or if you're in Florida, it's a land trust. So it depends. And then each of these LLCs, they're disregarded, just as we talked about earlier. They're all owned by the corporation as follows. So the corporation owns 100% of them. So the flip takes place up here. Your LLC is the one that's going to sell the property. Now, why do I want to do this? Well, the reason why we're flipping out of the LLC and not the company is for the reason that I just explained earlier. You know, what would the effect of a lawsuit have on our business? Because we flipped a property and now the buyers are having buyer's remorse. They felt that they overpaid, so they're looking for potential defects, potential claims they could bring against us. So in point of fact, we have a client that we created a structure for. He's a titanium client, and I'll explain what that means a little bit later here. You know, he can create as many LLCs as he wants with us. So this particular client decided to do this, put 3 properties in one LLC, although the recommendation was to create 1 LLC per property. And it happens because business sometimes gets in the way of the planning. And so he flipped this property here to a homeowner. And this one was actually in Tacoma, Washington. She bought the property, so it's no longer owned in the LLC. After she bought this property, she heard from a neighbor that there could be water issues in the basement because of the water table, and she should have a plumber come in and inspect her basement to make sure that the seller did proper remediation down there to ensure that she won't have water buildup. She brought in a plumber. The plumber looked at the work that was done, said it was not built to code, and then stated that it would take $50,000 to fix it. Well, of course, it was built to code because they were able to obtain a CO, a past inspection. But you're a homeowner and you hear that, you think, all right, this person screwed me. So what she's going to do, she's going to get an attorney. She did. And that attorney now is going to send a letter threatening a lawsuit against this LLC. And that's exactly what happened. This client came into the office. I mean, Actually, what happened was he called me twice during my lunch hour, and I wasn't in the office, and he left 2 messages. And each message was, Clint, I need to speak with you today. It's imperative that I talk to you. Click. Another one. Clint, we really need to talk. And I'm listening to that second message. Now, whenever you get a message like that from a client, you know, right? They're up to their knees or even hips and stuff we don't want to be walking through. And I'm listening to it. If you could see all my office right now, there's a two glass doors right over here that are off the lobby. And I'm listening to it, and you just you sense someone staring at you. I look over, and here's this guy, and my door is open. He's like, yeah, that's me. I just left you the message 20 minutes ago. I said, oh, I guess you want to meet, right? He goes, yeah, I need to meet with you. And so we sat down in the conference room, and he said, check out this letter. And he gave me a letter to read. And it was the letter from the attorney. And the attorney said he's representing this individual and that they're demanding that our client pay him or her $50,000 or they're going to file suit. So what do you tell a client in that scenario? Do you tell them, oh, well, not a problem. Not a big deal. You're not, we can get you out of this. That's what I would like to tell them. And in fact, I've told many clients that before when I see a letter like that from an attorney threatening a lawsuit against an LLC, a business that they own where they flipped a property or they used to own a rental in, and I look at it and I'll tell them, oh, yeah, do this and throw it away. And people's eyes get really bugged out of their head. What, we don't need to respond? He said, nah, it's a shakedown. What are they going after? This case, I couldn't do it. I looked at him and I said, how many properties are in that LLC, right? Tell me none. He said, no, I got 2 other flips going on. I said, okay, so this is my recommendation. Try to settle this for $35,000. Let's see if we can get 30 grand or 30, if they'll take something less. And he got really quiet, got really upset with that advice and said to me, why did I hire you guys? You said you'd create structures to help protect my assets. And I said, that's right. We can create structures to help you protect your assets and to make sure that you're protected. But creating the structures and telling you what to do is one thing. Follow through is what's important, right? I think we can agree with that. That just because you're here today getting the education on how to put these things together, that education by itself is not enough. We need the follow through to create the plans and then follow the plan. And this is where the follow through didn't occur because I showed him the plan that was set up. And then, in fact, he had the other LLCs set up, but he didn't follow through with the plan and he put both properties or 3 properties into one LLC. I said, in that case, this attorney now has you. Because in that letter, what he stated is that he will file a lis pendens against your 2 other flips, and that means he's going to lien them. When you sell those flips, that money, the profit up to $50,000 is going to be paid in the court registry. So you're going to lose $50,000 right away in the court registry. You're going to have to hire an attorney to defend yourself, and that's probably going to run you 30 grand. He's probably going to charge his client 30 grand. So now you've got a total risk exposure here of $110,000. If you go to trial, which is going to take 2 years, and you lose, you pay their attorney's fees, your attorney's fees, and the $50K. This is why I'm telling you we have to settle. And I never want to tell someone that. What I like to tell people, which I've done many times, is throw it away. Don't stress over it because there's no assets in the LLC. They're suing a company that they're not going to get anything from, like that client I just referred to earlier that had sold a property out of his LLC. And now an attorney saying, well, the tenant from a year prior when it was a rental was injured. And yeah, you never know about it, but we forgot to tell you that. We can still sue you under the statute of limitations. We have 3 years to do it. Here they are suing. They're suing an LLC. And the LLC that they're suing has already been dissolved, but they're so lazy, they didn't even take the time to look it up. All they did was they said, who was on the rental agreement? So they're going after a limited liability company. You see, this is what he should have done. Flip the property, right? Flip this property, then dissolve the LLC. Now, what happens? If he created kept each property in its own separate LLC, this attorney now, who does he sue? The business that own the property is out of business. Or even if it's not out of business, maybe you keep it for a while. It has no assets. So there's nothing for them to attach. So when we're thinking about asset protection, we want to make sure that if you're going to flip, this is the way you do it. Okay. One property per LLC. Do not give someone else the upper hand on you, because if you keep those assets in there, that's what's going to occur. And it really limits our planning. And then it becomes the plan is open up your checkbook to get that thing settled. And I mean, that's not something that's covered by insurance, by the way. So you can have as much insurance as you want. You're not going to be covered on that type of claim. So make sure we're doing it right. The other thing I wanted to share with you on this is how to protect our personal residence. So we've talked about investment real estate. Let's talk about personal residence real quick, because, protecting your home is really important for all of us. And there's reasons for that. We have a lot of equity in it. But more important than that, the equity is the memories. You generate a lot of memories living somewhere for an extended length of time. And you don't want one mistake in your life to wipe those out. So how do we protect a personal residence? Well, the idea here in a personal residence, what we want to do is we want to get the property out of your name. Because when the house is in your name, if someone obtains a judgment against you, let's say they get a judgment against you for $100,000, and it could be a frivolous judgment. Maybe you don't even get notified of the fact that you've been sued, and they still get the judgment entered against you. And what they'll do is they'll record it in the county where the asset is located. So they get this judgment against you. They record it in the county where your home is located, because they just look up where you live. So they record the judgment against you, and it'll stick to any property you own in your name. Your personal residence happens to be one of those assets. So now, if you try to refi or when you sell, the creditors get paid. And what's the worst thing about this is these judgments, guess what the interest rate is on that? 10%. It's huge. It's a great investment for a creditor to have. 10%, you owe me 100 grand this year, next year it's 110. Following year it's 121,000. It just keeps ratcheting up. So the way we protect your personal residence is we stop owning our residence in our individual name. So if anybody gets a judgment against me, they can't attach that because I don't own property in my own name. Now, it's really simple to do what I'm about to share with you. All right. All it takes is creating what I told you earlier is a residence trust. Residence trust. Okay. So you set up a trust. It doesn't have to be filed anywhere. Okay. It's a private document. So we create this trust agreement. Now, when you create a trust agreement, you have to have a trustee and you have to have a beneficiary. It's like a land trust, but it's got different provisions in it when we're using it for a personal residence. So when we create this residence trust, you will be the beneficiary of your trust. So you'll be listed in the trust agreement as the beneficiary. Now, the trustee, who's that going to be? Well, I know many of us will think it's got to be me. And there's a lot of attorneys that set up trusts for their clients where they list their client as the trustee. The problem with that type of planning is that if I had Mike and Maria here as clients, M&M, and I list Mike and Maria as the trustees on their trust, then when we transfer title, deed the property into this trust, let's call this the Smitty Cat Trust. So if we transfer title from Mike and Maria into the Smitty Cat Trust, now again, you can pick any name you want. And I like using crazy names for my trusts. I don't want to have it associated back to me in any way. But if I put Mike and Maria on as trustee, when you deed the property, here's what happens. Mike and Maria deed the property to Mike and Maria as trustees of the Smitty Cat Trust. Now, would someone be able to figure out that Mike and Maria own that property if they looked at title to that house? Absolutely, right? Because it says Mike and Maria grantor, Mike and Maria trustees as grantee. Boom, same people. Not only do they know that they own it, that judgment will attach because their name's on title. So in order to fix this, Mike and Maria can't serve as the trustees. What you need to use is a nominee trustee. So you have to use someone else as your trustee. So at Anderson, when we create these trusts, I'm on probably 8,000 or 9,000 trusts that have been created for our clients where my name's listed as a trustee. So what happens is that it'll say trustee Clint Coons, Esquire, attorney, right? That's what that means. Listed as a trustee. So Mike and Maria are deeding their property into my name as the trustee of this trust. So on title now, it appears that I own the property. I'm sure some of you are sitting there going, that's how you got 300 properties. That sneaky attorney, right? He's just getting unsuspecting, gullible people to deed property to him in these trusts. And so now he owns it. Well, trustees don't own it. And if you're wondering about how much control I have over it, let me just tell you, I have zero control over this property, right? Because a trust is like a contract, right? See, people are laughing right now. I really don't. I own nothing in that. Trust is like a contract. We put in the contract, Clint, you can't sell the property. You can't live in the property. You can't rent the property. You can't refinance the property. Clint, we just want you there to serve as a shield. So if somebody's looking, they don't see us. Now, I'm fine doing that because as a trustee, I have zero liability if something goes wrong with that asset. So I have no problem. So our clients will transfer real estate into my name as the trustee. And then as soon as that's done, I resign. I'm off there. And the trust is set up so Mike and Maria are the successor trustees. In fact, Mike and Maria as the beneficiary have all that control that I just listed off, power to sell, power to refinance, all that. If you look at the trust agreement, it states that Mike and Maria as the beneficiaries have all that control. So I'm done. I resigned. Mike and Maria are in the trust agreement as a successor trustee. And when I resign, I give them what's called a trustee's deed. It states that they're the trustees of the trust now. So when they want to put their name on the trust, they can do it. They just have to record it. And I'm off the picture. But if a creditor's looking, they have no idea what's gone on because everything I just described to you, it's a private document. The only thing that gets recorded is the deed. When you want to protect a personal residence, this is the best way to go about doing that, getting your name off of title. Now, we use myself, or actually my son Carter, who's an attorney that works for us now. He used to be an attorney with Deloitte. He's served as a lot of trustees as well in these trusts. And so not only do you get the fact that you have an attorney serving as your nominee trustee, you also get attorney-client privilege. And what I'm saying there is a couple of years ago, one of our clients, where I was the trustee of his trust, had some raw land in this trust. And it was being foreclosed on. And so they filed the notice of foreclosure. They served me. I had to call up the attorney that was representing the plaintiff. And I said, you got the wrong party. He said, no, you're listed as a trustee. I got the right party. I said, I already resigned. I resigned a couple of years ago. And his next question was, well, who is a trustee? I said, well, I'm not going to tell you that. That's called attorney-client privilege. You know what that is. I can't disclose who that person is, even if I knew who it was. And the guy became irate. He said, I've wasted all my time, blah, 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 and went on and on. I said, well, it sounds like it's a you problem, not a me problem. Can't help you. Get a subpoena if you want any more than that. And I hung up on him. And so that's the benefit you have in this type of situation. It gives you a tremendous amount of control in dealing with creditors. So setting up a land trust, you set it up in this manner, you become the trustee. I've done this for years. Let me just show you what I'm getting at here. It actually gets a little annoying sometimes, as you're going to see here in a second. But look at this property here. It says Gabby Lodge Trust, Clint Coons trustee. The property is located in Wisconsin. I don't own any property in Wisconsin. I'm not the trustee of this trust. I already resigned. But creditors don't know that. Third parties don't know that. In fact, that's why I said it's a little irritating at times. And I have this now a robocaller blocker on my cell phone because I receive text messages and phone calls every week. You know, hey, Clint, we're driving down Artemis Lane this morning and we passed your property on 2421. I don't even know where that is. All right, Clint, Briarcrest Trust, reaching out about the Briarcrest Drive property. Again, don't know, or this one's in Seattle here. I get phone calls like this, text messages, because people are looking at the property address and they're seeing my name, they're skip tracing me, figuring out where I'm at, and then reaching out, see whether or not I'm interested in selling or things like that. And so that just, I'm illustrating to you the power of you getting your name off of title. And at any time, if you want to put your name back on, all you have to do is record the trustee's deed. But if you don't want to, and say somebody sued you and they got a judgment against you, that judgment won't stick to the property. And so by having my name on there, that property can be sold, it can be refinanced, and those proceeds get paid into the trust and they never go to a creditor. That's the power of having that residence trust. And as I stated, you know, that's in quadrant one. This is what we want to be doing for those types of assets. And so, you know, I've been talking about a lot of different strategies here as far as protecting our real estate and utilizing these tools. And, you know, some of us that are on here right now may be wondering, well, you know, Clint, does it really work that way? Does it provide that type of protection? Well, I want to show you something. This was an email I received from a client, and unfortunately, she was on the opposite end. She was the plaintiff. She had entered into business dealings with these two Hawaii real estate developers, and they basically took her money. Deal didn't work out, so she sued them. And she got a judgment against them for $2 million. They paid her part of the judgment, but they still owed her over $1 million. They hadn't been paying to her. And this has been going on for a few years, and she was really frustrated. And she said, Clint, these guys are living in my neighborhood, driving Teslas, Mercedes, and high-rise condos. They have money, but I'm not getting paid. Can you help me? Well, I said, well, you know, I'm engaged in litigation. I consult, but I'll definitely take a look at this. And so knowing where she's at, because she got a judgment, you see, there's two aspects here. Anonymity is, hey, they don't even want to sue me. Now, let's assume that they still sue you and you've created the structures that we've been talking about. Well, this is where they run into a wall and they realize what a mistake we just made in time and effort and investment to go after this person, because they've created a structure that doesn't require that they pay to us. And that's what she ran into, because when she got the judgment, she was allowed to peel back the curtain and see what's behind the curtain and see what they own, because they have to disclose it at that point in time. And that dramatically changes, okay, the trajectory of their recovery, because she thought she was going to get $2 million. And she sent this structure over to me. And I looked at that and I went, oh, yeah, these guys have been doing some planning. And first of all, I thought they might be our clients. And so I was wondering if we had a conflict there, and hopefully they weren't. I researched them and they were not our clients. So then I could keep talking to her. I said, okay, great. Now I see how their structure is set up, and they got a lot of entities. But what's key is we need to know where the money flows, where they fit into all of this. Because, you know, I showed you the blue box owning red boxes. Well, you don't own the red boxes. You only own the blue box. So if somebody came after you, it's only the blue box they could get to. All those red boxes, they can't touch those. See, there's a lot of layers that have been built in here that we didn't even have a chance to really get into today, because just limited on time. But we're planning, you know, with this in mind, like if something like this happened to you. And she said, okay, I've got that. And she sent this over. And right then and there, I knew we had problems and I could not help her. And the reason why is that these people have, all their money flows through Nevada limited liability companies. And as I explained to her, I said, Nevada is a state that offers tremendous asset protection, like Wyoming. But the reason we don't use it any longer is that the anonymity component makes it difficult for people to open bank accounts in Nevada, because you have to use a nominee manager. And we found that with bank account openings, it became problematic. So we went with Wyoming, who doesn't list the manager. So we switched, but Nevada still has strong charging order protections. So I also wanted to take a look at the operating agreements to see maybe they screwed up with their operating agreements, but I didn't think they would, because of the fact that they obviously used an attorney to assist them in creating this plan, because this isn't something you just come up with on your own. And looking, she got a copy of the operating agreement as well in discovery. And sure enough, these things were tight. I said, I'm sorry, I can't help you here. And I know how impactful that is for someone to hear that, because, you know, they think just because I do this, that I can break holes through things and find ways around it. Sometimes we can if it's not set up right. And we've worked with people before where that's happened. But if they do invest into themselves to hire the people that understand exactly what they're doing, like these Gene and Waters did, then there's nothing you can do. And it's heartbreaking to tell someone that, you know, is truly aggrieved and they've lost money, but it is what it is. And so those types of stories, like what I'm about to share with you next, is what really motivates me. It's the why behind what we do, because, you know, there's a lot of people out there that rather than go out and do what you're doing and do it for themselves and put in the time and the effort, they like to sit back. They're like seagulls, and they just swoop in and take what they can from those people who've spent the time and the effort, because the law, unfortunately, does tend to reward people from bringing lawsuits. And it's something that I wish we could change, but in this country, there's too many friggin' attorneys, and it's never going to change. And that's why we have to take steps to put in place plans that protect us. And so when somebody brings a frivolous claim against you, seeking $15 million in damages, and for example, you happen to live in California, which is a very pro-plaintiff state, you want to know that you have protection in place that is going to be protecting your assets against those. And let me just show you what the story of this individual client shared with you.
Before I met Clint and everybody at Anderson, we had some entities structured with another attorney and stuff. And we're going through a lot of stuff. And I took Clint's course and had him look at all of our books and stuff. And come to find out, we were completely structured all wrong. And so he and Anderson redid all of our books, put us in the right structure. We had stuff in our own names. He took care of all of that for us and has saved us, literally, no joke, millions and millions of dollars in lawsuits. And we could not be more thankful and grateful that we went to the course, that we met you, and for everything that you guys over there that have done for us.
Yeah, it's one of those things where a claim was brought against him in this example she was talking about, and it was frivolous, and I told him that, but it was in California. And people move forward to those all the time because they have what's called joint and several liability. So it gives the attorneys ammunition to hold people that unsuspecting, that are unprotected. There's a lot of people that are out there that do not have protection, and they realize that too late, that when they go against you, you can be held liable. Even if you're only 2% negligent, you can be held 100% liable for the plaintiff's damages. But what happened here is the attorneys ran an asset search on her and her husband, and they found 0 assets in their own name. And so they said, we will settle for your policy limits, and they let them off for their policy limits. Now, there was another defendant in this case, happened to be their father, his father. And he just owned a building where this car accident occurred, or accident occurred between a pedestrian and a vehicle. And they said, well, the building owner's liable because he owned the building. That's where the people got smashed against. It's like, what are you talking about? So the building didn't move. The building, it's an inanimate object. It doesn't matter. They sued him. He tried to settle as well, and they would not settle with him for his policy limits. And the reason what they stated, these attorneys, they said, we ran an asset search, and we know that you're worth over $12 million in LA County in real estate alone. That's all in your name. You can pay. You see, it turned on what they could discover, whether or not my client could settle and their father couldn't. And I get questions, well, why didn't you protect your father? I tried, but he didn't see the value in what I was offering. He thought it was going to complicate his life. Well, I did bring him on as a client after this all settled out, and those questions got answered, and he saw the wisdom in it, and his attorney that used to represent him understood the importance of it at that point in time. But unfortunately, for some people, it just takes going through that and losing, in his case, several $1 million to come out on the other side and say, wow, I wish I would have done things differently. And so when we're creating plans, we want to make sure that we're setting them up in a way in which it's checking, as I stated earlier, all the boxes. It's not just having the plan in place. It's about understanding their essential provisions that go into the documents that you should be asking. When you're creating an LLC, you want to make sure there are no forced distributions. You don't want any language like that inside of your LLC operating agreement. You want to make sure you have the ability to engage in competing ventures. So if you're a real estate investor, you're not setting it up just for your brokerage account, but if you're setting up for real estate, you want to make sure that your operating agreement provides for this. You want to make sure you have the proper tax provisions in there. So if you set up your LLC to be a disregarded corporation, S corporation, partnership, there are different provisions that are required to be in that operating agreement. So if you get audited, the IRS will not turn the tables on you. There was a recent court case, tax court case, where an individual investor screwed it up, stated with the IRS when he pulled his EIN that he was electing to be treated as an S corporation. Well, he used and had an LLC set up for him. And when they set up the LLC, they chose to treat it as a partnership for federal tax purposes. He got audited. The IRS said, you cannot have those types of provisions in your operating agreement. You don't have an S corp. You actually have a partnership, and he got blown up on his taxation. He owed, I forget how many, hundreds of thousands of dollars in penalties and interest. Little things like that matter. Charging order language, what I'm talking about. You want to make sure whenever you're setting up an LLC, question, does this have charging order language in there? Let me see the provision. That's going to protect me. Restrictions on transfer of ownership. You don't want to have an LLC set up that allows someone that's a member to just freely transfer their interest, because you can end up in a partnership with someone else you never anticipated. So you want to restrict that. No right to return of capital, pro rata distributions, and appointment of officer provisions. These are some of the key provisions. Now, they're not going to be in every operating agreement that we put together. It depends on what the client's doing, but there's just some core things. And this one right here is really important. It's one of the key provisions that are going to be in any operating agreement. And I'll show you something here. This was a recent tax court or recent court case out of Utah. So this guy had entered into this agreement with this person over here to sell this business and whatnot. The details aren't that important, but he got a sum of money from this agreement. And he took that money and he set up a Nevada limited liability company, set up this Nevada LLC, and he placed, $4 million up there and a house. And again, numbers don't matter here. What he did is he wanted to protect what he received. Doesn't matter if it's $40,000, they tell people, 4 million or 400 million. Whatever you lose, depending on where you're at on that, is going to hurt. So he put some money up there for protection purposes. And then he gave out the interest where he was an owner, his wife was an owner, and his kids gave him each 1% interest. So the kids each had 1%. He and his wife had 48% each, just like that. Now, in this agreement for the sale, there were certain things that he had to do, and he didn't abide by those. So this person over here sued him because he refused to abide by the provisions of the agreement, and they got a judgment against him, let's say, for $2 million. Again, judgment's a judgment. It's not relevant. But what's relevant is what happens. Somebody gets a judgment against you for $30,000 and you have an LLC set up that holds $50,000 in a brokerage account. You set up that LLC so that it's going to protect that brokerage account so that creditor won't get paid. And I'm sure that's what he was thinking when he created his limited liability company. Well, what transpired is that they get a charging order on his interest. Like I talked about, they put that charging order on his LLC. And so obviously this gentleman thinks he's protected because we know you can't take that charging order and get up into his company. And so what he started doing is he started distributing money to his wife, and he wasn't taking any money out because the court said, hey, if you take any money out, you got to give it to your creditor. Well, the creditor finds out about this and then drags him back into court says, whoa, 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 wait a minute, what's going on here? And he said, well, I'm not taking any money, my wife is. And so the creditor asked him to produce a copy of his operating agreement. So they looked at the operating agreement, and the operating agreement states that all distributions will be pro rata. So on an annual basis, any distributions that are taken out of this LLC have to be made on a pro rata basis. Now, having that language in there, like he did, pro rata basis, allowed this creditor to break into his LLC and take the assets. See, what they argued to the court is that when he was making distributions to his wife, he was not giving himself distributions. And per his operating agreement, it stated that all distributions needed to be made pro rata, which means equal. So if he gave his wife $48, he had to take $48. That's what the operating agreement states. You have to abide by your operating agreement. And so as a result of that, they deemed that he had a $48 distribution, even though he didn't pull the money out. And when that happens, the court's going to say, well, you didn't pay it to your creditors. And you're going to say, well, I didn't take the money. It doesn't matter. You're deemed to have received it and you're obligated to pay it. You didn't pay it. You violated the charging order. Now I'm going to allow him access to your money. And that's what happened. You see, that situation, it could have been avoided completely with 3 letters. All he needed to do was have a clause in there that said non-pro rata. See, when you draft an operating agreement, if you would use the term non-pro rata, that distributions can be made on a non-pro rata basis, that would allow you to distribute money to your spouse and you don't have to take anything. And a creditor cannot use that against you. I hope you can realize here what I'm talking about is that it's not just enough to create an LLC, which this gentleman did. You also need to understand what goes into the LLC, the language itself. And there's a lot of people that out there that, because we know we've reviewed operating agreements before, they set these things up. They have an expectation of receiving asset protection if they ever find themselves in this situation. But when it happens, like this gentleman found out, 3 letters meant the difference between creditor getting paid versus not getting paid. So make sure that list that I put up there, that when you're creating your operating agreements, you're knocking all those out and you're making sure that that LLC is being established in a way that's going to protect you, because you never know when these things happen. And that's why what we've done here at Anderson for you taking the time out today is we've created something for you that we call our Business Essentials package. And what this is designed to do is really take everything that we've been talking about, we've been sharing, and what Toby's going to be talking to you about, and put it together for you so you can start on that path and create that journey going forwards to protect assets, because we recognize that this is important. That's why you're here and you've spent the entire day with us. And you're going to be spending the entire day with us because it's important. But just as I stated earlier, getting to this point and understanding it, but then not moving forwards with it doesn't help us achieve our dreams and our goals. We need to take action on that. And I've seen it happen before. There are individuals who won't. And when we don't take action, we become a story that I like to use in my events. And I don't want anyone to be one of the stories. And one that I recall, I was in I think it was Oklahoma, and I was talking to this, I was teaching an event. It was an in-person event, and I finished up on day 1, and this couple came up to me. They're in their late 70s or 60s, and they wanted to sit down and spend 30 minutes with me. They said, can we just have 30 minutes of your time? I know you're tired. You've spoken all day. I said, sure, sit down with you. Because, I recognize people have taken the time to come and attend our events. I'm going to make that investment back. And so I sat down with them and we started talking about what they were doing. And they said, I tell you, everything you said today, Clint, resonates with us. I said, really? And they said, yeah, we used to. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that before. We used to. There's a lot of people out there that's not here today. They're probably saying the same thing. I used to. They used to have 16 rentals. I forget the exact number, but they had a fair amount of rental properties. And they had retired when they hit 60 years of age. And they had these rental properties and was creating great income for them for their retirement. Not only was it creating income for their retirement, it was also creating income so they could send their son to college. And their son was sent off to Arizona State University, and he was there less than a year. And he was in a car accident. He had a car and he hit someone who was in a crosswalk, and that person was severely injured. And they turned around and they sued. They sued the son, but the son has no assets because he's a college student. They also named the parents in the lawsuit because the parents were still supporting the son. So they said it was still his responsibility. And they bankrupted the parents. And they sat and they told me, they said, you know, we're here today. We've retired from our jobs. We thought we had a retirement plan and everything, our future was in front of us and we're going to travel the world and do these things. And that's now all been put on hold because we have nothing. Wiped out because of this. And they didn't hold their son responsible. They didn't hold the plaintiff's attorneys responsible. They're very magnanimous about this. What they said to me is they said, we hold ourselves responsible because we'd heard this before, but we never thought it could happen to us. We were one of those that thought, oh, if I have insurance, I'm protected. And so we discounted it, or we thought it was going to be too complex. And they said, you know, listening to you, we realize now what we didn't know and what we should have done. And they basically said they'd already found new jobs. They were starting over and they were going to rebuild their portfolio, and their retirement dreams had been pushed back, but they wanted to start working with us and they wanted to build it on the proper foundation. And when you hear that, you know, it can't help but hit you right here to see someone that could be bitter, right? That they're at this point in life, but they weren't. They saw it as a challenge that they were going to take on, but they're going to take this challenge on in a different manner and do things a different way this time. And if you're investing and you have assets right now and it's resonating with you and you're understanding that, hey, these are things that are important in life, and I want to leave something to that next generation, and I want to do it in a way that's protected, then this is your opportunity with our Business Essentials to do that. And so what does that mean with our Business Essentials? Here's what's included. We'll create a custom draft identity for you. So choice of an LLC, a corporation, WST, Wyoming Statutory Trust, or a solo 401k, we will set that up. So we're going to create the entity. So maybe it's a Wyoming that you need, or maybe it's a corporation for your construction business. The point is that we're going to create a custom entity. When I say a custom entity, we're going to do all the heavy lifting. This isn't where you fill out some operating agreement or with a bunch of fill in the blanks. No, it's where we ask you, we consult with you about your business, and we're going to talk to you about the tax implications. We're going to talk to you about the legal implications. We're going to determine where you're doing your business, what type of business you're engaged in, and then we're going to draft the articles, file them for you, prepare an operating agreement that reflects your business. Many times when I review an operating agreement, it'll have a clause in there such as this LLC can engage in all lawful business activity. And I'll ask the individual that submitted the operating agreement, what is your LLC? What type of business are you in? Oh, I run a nail salon. It doesn't say that in here. And so that's a clue to me that this person either is working with someone that's out there that didn't invest the time into them to help put them on the right path, or maybe they downloaded it from Zoom to create their structure. And so it just shows that it's just generic. When we're creating entities, we're looking at your business and we're building out that business or that LLC, that company around that business. And so you have certain clauses in there that reflect on that type of business activity, because these are things that we know will come up as you move forwards. So we make sure you get the right tax election as well for your business. And then we have that language that's built inside of there. We give you anonymity shield provisions. Like I said, your name's not going to appear on anything. People are not going to show up at your house with a small claims court summons because they're not going to know how to find you because of the way we've created your company. We obtain your EIN number from your Internal Revenue Service, then we prepare a unit ledger, and we put all this together in a binder for you. And we send you out something that speaks volumes. And here's what I tell people. When you set up a business the right way, it's going to help you get deals done. I know it does, and I'll show you what I mean by that in just a moment. Because your business, the entity that you're creating, reflects upon you. And if you're working with third parties, they're going to ask, it's going to come up. They're going to say, I want to see a copy of your operating agreement. And that's where that turning point's going to come. Or if you're being sued, they're going to ask you for a copy of the operating agreement. And so what person or where are we going to be? Are we going to be like the people that aren't on here today that they go out and they say, oh, I need an operating agreement to close on this loan. And they print out something they find on the internet and they put it on their desk and their coffee cup was sitting right there a moments ago. And that paper, that 6-page operating agreement they put down gets a coffee ring on the back of it. And then they rapidly write in some information and they take that agreement, that operating agreement, which by the way, you can tell they recently printed it out because the ink was fading and went from black to light gray because they're running out of ink on the cartridge. And they walk into a bank and they go, here's my operating agreement. Can I get that loan? Because you asked for it. And they look through it and they see the ink, they see the coffee stain. They see the ink is fading on that. They see that you filled in the blanks. And then, which happens all the time when I review them, you find other pieces of information that's not even relevant. I looked at an operating agreement Friday, a couple weeks ago. And in this operating agreement, it had the wrong state for where the investment was located. It had clauses that referenced other clauses that didn't even exist in the agreement. And it had exhibits that were not even referenced. And I'm just going through and going, what is this mess? I know what it is. It's someone that just threw something together. And right, maybe you get by with it for a bit, but long-term, it's not going to help you once that gets looked at, like when I looked at it. And the question from this individual was, am I protected? My answer was no. And I sent him back the agreement all marked up. I said, this is just, you got to start over. If you do it the right way, you're going to get deals done. Check this out. So this was an email we received. Hello, Savannah. She works for us. So the hard money lender we're dealing with on the deal has been in the funding business for 17 years, and he stated this is the best structured JV LLC that he'd ever seen. And he went on to describe some nightmare stories where things were not set up right. So thank you very much. That's what an operating agreement can do. It can help someone get a deal done. This person, we set up a joint venture LLC for them. All the necessary provisions in there. He went in, he brought in an operating agreement. I know our JV operating agreements run easily between 85 to 112 pages, 115 pages in length. And so when the lender looked at that, they knew that this person was serious about their business. Whereas the individual I just described to you, if you're on the other side of that, do you think they're serious about their business? Because they made no investment into themselves. And they're just out there trying to get someone to take faith in them. It takes a little bit of work on our end first to get other people to want to invest back into us. And so when we're creating that agreement for you, that's what we're going to be doing, having those necessary provisions, putting together in a very professional manner. The second thing that we're going to include in our business essentials is what we call our Platinum program. Now, you've heard me mention it once or twice, Platinum clients. So what is the Platinum program? Because I saw a lot of questions pop up there once I mentioned that. Well, here's what it is. We realized this when we started practicing. But what is the number one reason why people don't seek legal advice before they do something? Money, right? Because the attorney's going to charge you an hourly rate. And that hourly rate, well, you can ask them what it is, but then you have to figure out what is the calculation? How did they come up with the amount of hours they're charging from that brief conversation? Well, they teach you that in law school, how to take a 20-minute conversation and turn it into an hour's worth of billables. That's what happens. And so we know that. So we shy away from attorneys for that reason, number one. And the second thing that comes up with attorneys many times is that how do they even know or understand what it is you're doing? So you're asking questions and you're hoping they understand it, but they may not even know it, or they're going to learn on your dime. That's how I often joke around with people. I say, hey, if you're a real estate investor and you're going to work with an attorney and you want to get advice from them, well, let's say you're into house hacking. Walk into the attorney's office and say, yeah, I want you to help me create a structure to house hack. Now, what does house hacking mean? It means I'm going to rent a room in my house to a third party to help pay my mortgage. I guarantee you 9 out of 10 attorneys will tell you that's an illegal activity. You cannot hack someone's house and they will not help you do it. Red flag should go off right there. Alarm. This person is not the person I should be consulting for this business activity because they don't understand what it is I'm doing. So how can it be that they can advise me on the proper course of structure? And Anderson, with our Platinum program, you're going to gain access to our attorneys, and you can call them up at any time. You're never going to be billed an hourly rate, and you're going to be talking to attorneys that have experience in doing what you're doing, that they've helped clients out, that many of them have invested in real estate, lease options, and things like that. So they're going to be able to guide you down the proper path for putting your deals together. So our Platinum program is about making sure that our clients have access to the level of experience that is necessary to build their business effectively, to build their investing. So you never get billed an hourly rate. Now, I told you that Anderson was about tax and about asset protection. Well, here's something else we're going to give to you. When you become a Platinum client, not only get to talk to the attorneys, you also get to talk to our tax professionals. You'll be able to call in and speak to the tax professionals to get your tax-related questions answered as well. If you don't want to call in, you can send the emails as well. So we want to make sure that when it comes to tax planning, there's so many different things out there, opportunities are available. You got a question about it before you go out and take action, call us up. Just like it is with the legal side, call us up and let's have a discussion about this. Be proactive. Let's make sure the tax code is working for us and not against us. And that's what our tax planning is done for our clientele. So you get unlimited access to talking to CPAs, tax strategists who understand your business. And on top of that, part of the service also includes document review. So when I told you that on a Friday evening, I was reviewing a client's documents, this client is a Platinum client, and she sent 2 documents in. One, there happened to be a lease option and a purchase agreement for a mobile home, and she wanted me to review them. So I reviewed and redlined them and marked them all up. Now, we don't draft. I sent that back. I do not draft. Our Anderson will not draft your agreements. But she was about ready to do this deal that I explained to her. I said, this is not enforceable the way it's going to be put together. You want to make sure that you can enforce this agreement if they don't pay, or they can't come back against you and get all their money back because of the terms that language you use. Here are all the problems. So if you've got agreement, somebody asks you to sign it, you send it in to us, we review those documents. You'll have an attorney look through it, mark it all up and say, here are the problems. Or they'll say, hey, it's a great agreement. And we've caught so many problems in the past for people that many times when you read something, you read into it what you're expecting to get out of it, and you're not reading the words. I'm just as guilty of this, right? I always have a second set of eyes on things because I realize it's just human nature. And so you're going to gain access to us. We'll review 2 legal documents a month. You just submit them as a Platinum client. You have a portal. You upload them. You get them reviewed. We send them back to you with our notes on that, what needs to be changed. If you want to set up a phone call, we'll set up a phone call. No cost to you, part of the Platinum. You're going to have access to our library of training videos. So we're about education. It's always been that way. You're going to see that when you start working with us, that we give a tremendous amount of knowledge. We give it away freely. That's one of the main criticisms I've had of people in the business. They say you give it all away you should be charging for it. That's not our philosophy. It's not our ethos. It's always been to educate people. And we found that by educating, you build trust. By building trust, then they want to work with you. Or they don't, they go out and they do it with someone else. That's fine. But as long as you do it, that's the most important thing to us here at Anderson. So we're going to keep this process rolling where you're going to learn more about how entities can benefit you through our training videos. And then we have a extensive library of customizable forms that you can tap into and use for your business, for your investing. And then we offer you exclusive member pricing. So when you become a Platinum client, our way of saying thank you is that as we have other opportunities that we bring for our clients for educational purposes or for structures and different entities, we're going to give you exclusive member pricing that's not available to someone that's out there that just comes in and calls us up off of seeing our YouTube channel or something like that. So you're going to get that as part of the Platinum program. The other thing we're going to include in that with this Business Essential package is that we want to make sure that we're also keeping your entity intact moving forwards, okay? Because when you set up an entity, you're going to have questions. I get it. It's all in the little details. You know, who should be doing those details? And a lot of times people get too caught up in the small things, and so they miss the big things. My father was that way when it came to investing. He would spend too much time on the things on his rental properties that were, I would call them low value. rather than spending the time on the high value activities that would allow him to acquire more. And it just, some people's personality. Well, when it comes to running a business, there's a lot of activities that you may have to engage in. You're not going to have to worry about any longer, because with our company assistance program, what we're going to do for you is we're going to first off provide you a headquarters in Nevada or Wyoming. We're going to give you an address. So your address will never be listed on a public document. It's going to be our address. And by using our physical address, we forward the mail to you. So any mail that gets sent there, we send it on to you, to you individually, so people can't trace you. On top of that, with those small things that I was talking about, when you need minutes and resolutions prepared, we will draft those for you. You don't have to worry about, how do I put together a resolution to dissolve my limited liability company on a piece of property that was used as a flip? All you can do is call us up. Hey, Clint, I need a dissolution for an LLC. No problem. We'll get that sent out to you, and all you have to do is sign it, and you're done. We send a lot of stuff out via DocuSign, so it's simple. You just click, and it's signed. So things like that. You're in front of a banker. You're trying to get a loan. We need a resolution from your LLC stating that you're the authorized party to sign on behalf of this loan. No problem. Call us up. We'll send it out to you. These are the types of things you don't need to be worrying about. You shouldn't be worrying about them, because you don't know what needs to be in there. We know it because we do it on a daily basis. So we're providing that. We also stay on top of your entities. So what I'm referring to is that on an annual basis, to maintain the entities itself, what you need to be doing, right? Meeting minutes, things of that nature. We're reaching out to you. So we take businesses. So when you sign up for us and we start working with you on the business essential side and we're creating an LLC, many times clients have other existing entities that they've created on their own. We bring all of those into our ecosystem here at Andersen. And so then we track everything. And so on an annual basis, quarterly basis, you're going to get notified from us. Hey, that entity you set up for yourself, are you aware that this needs to be done? We'll do it for you. It's part of our service. All you got to do is answer the following information. We'll get the documents prepared. We'll send them out to you for signature, and we'll do the necessary filings for you. Or we'll prepare your meeting minutes. So the company assistance program is push, making sure that your entity never goes out of compliance, because this can happen. Work with a lot of military families, investors. And I've seen this over the years where they PCS, they have to move to another location, and they maybe have a house and an LLC set up there in rental property, and they forget to change the address. And then their LLC is administratively dissolved. And now they no longer have the protection they thought they did, because that LLC is dissolved. And not only is it dissolved, here's the problem. Now it creates a title issue. If they want to deed the property, they have a clouded title. And so now you have this huge expense to fix that. That never happens with our clients, because what we're doing is we're making sure those entities are always staying in compliance, because we're monitoring everything with the state, and then we're keeping you informed. So we keep electronic storage of all your documents. As I stated, the annual renewals, we keep reminding you. And then, hey, if you guys want to come out to Vegas and meet us in Vegas, or make it a tax deductible trip because you're going to play at the same time, we can make that happen. So in our Las Vegas offices, we have boardroom space that we make available to all of our clientele. They can come out there, they can book a meeting with us, and we encourage them. If you're going out to Vegas for a couple of days, let's say you want to spend the weekend in Las Vegas, set up a meeting with us. Let's meet on Friday. Now it becomes a business trip, and we can then deduct that cost of that travel to get out there. Not the hotel stays, we can get the flights deducted. We can make that happen. When you become a company assistant, when you're part of our company assistance program, we can provide that to you. We've been doing it for over 20 years for our clientele. It's all wrapped into one to make sure that business is running the right way and doing everything it needs to do on an annual basis. And then the crux of all this really comes down to the planning, right? It's like building a house. We got to have a proper foundation. And I know people are sitting there, I've seen them, hey, how do I set up an LLC, or I think I need a corporation. I get it. A lot of those questions, WSTs, they've been hitting the Q&A, asking our attorneys. You should be doing that, right? That's what I told you to do. But the thing is that when you sign up with Business Essentials, we're going to put together a custom tax and entity structure. We're going to look at what you have, your income that you're currently generating, how that income is being made, any existing businesses you have. We're going to look at all your assets, that quadrant that I showed you. We're going to develop something like that. And then we're going to create a personalized wealth planning blueprint. Because what you think you need from listening to me may not be what we determine is actually in your best interest going forwards. And so maybe it's something different. Hey, yeah, you heard Clint talk about this and you think you need a series LLC, but in your situation, you're going to be better served with this type of structure over here. And so the plan that we create for you is not only going to focus on the three legs of the stool, asset protection, tax planning, and business planning. We're going to look at today, and we're also going to build it for tomorrow. So we create this entire blueprint of entities, and we say, all right, here's today, and then here's what you need in the future. So it helps you track. Let's say you sat down with us and you said, you know what, I decided I want to start wholesaling, and then in the future, I want to start flipping. Okay, great. Here's what we're going to do for your wholesaling activity. When you start flipping, here's what you need to do. So call us back at that point in time, and we'll help you get this set up. So when you make that transition over to that other type of investing activity, we're there for you, and you can look at that plan because it's collaborative. That we have this structure that's created through what's called Lucidchart online. It's protected, encrypted. Everyone in Anderson, the CPAs and the attorneys and the strategists all have access to it. So we can all communicate within the same ecosystem so we can provide this level of support that our clients have come to expect by working with anyone within the company. The Who's This For? Okay, if you're sitting back right now, you've been listening to me. You know, we really designed this plan around those of you that have taken the time out of your day to be here. Because we understand there's many different reasons why people come to this event. Some of it's tax planning. Some of it is just to protect their brokerage account. They want to create a trading business. Maybe you're from Canada and you're investing in the United States, or you're a real estate investor, or you don't own real estate yet, but you want to get started in real estate and you want to do it the proper way without incurring liability. So we've developed this for beginning investors, for experienced investors, for investors who are seeking tax savings, and for anyone that just, you have assets and you want to make sure that those assets are going to be here for your retirement or for the future generations. That's what Business Essentials is designed for, to put each of you in that position, wherever you fit inside of there. We've got something we can bring to bear and bring that into place for you so we can move forwards. All right. So just to give you an idea of what Business Essentials, breaking it all down as far as the investment, custom drafted entity is $2,750. The Platinum program, it's $34.95 to join, and to maintain it, it's plus $75 a month. Okay. Again, you can talk to CPAs, attorneys. No, you'll never be billed an hourly rate. Toby and I, we talk to clients all the time, and I bill out at $7.50 an hour, and our clients do not pay an hourly rate. This past week, I spoke to someone for 2 hours on the guy that had the house burned down. So Platinum program, $34.95. The company assistance program is $1,800. The custom tax and entity structure at $750. The total value of the package is $87.95. That is not your investment today to get started with this. And I'll show you what that is in a moment. But one of the things that we firmly believe in here at Anderson, Toby and I believe in, is that those people who take action and, take time out of their daily lives and they sacrifice time with family and with work to come here, we understand that that's a huge ask for many of us because our time is really valuable right now. And so for taking that time to be here, we want to provide you with a few bonus items is our way of saying thank you, that we appreciate and understand what it took to get here today, because there's a lot of people out there that found other things to do rather than be here. And so for those of you that are here, you're going to get something now with these bonus items that no one else will get. If you called us and, just called us off an email or something like that, or saw us on, as I said, on YouTube and called in, these things aren't available. It's those people who commit that receive the benefits. And so what we're going to provide to you is a couple of bonus items here. They're going to add so much to what it is you're doing. One of them is going to be the tax toolbox. And in the tax toolbox, Toby Mathis put this together, and you're going to see why when you hear him talk this afternoon. You're going to see his genius come through. And what he did on the tax side is he went and worked with our tax department, and we do 10,000 returns a year. And he sat down with them. He said, what are the top 20 strategies we're using right now to put more money back in our clients' pockets? So they outlined it all out. And so he took those tax strategies and he created video lessons around them. And why did we do this? Because we realized that not all the clients that begin working with Anderson on the legal side may use this on the tax side. So you need to know what tax strategies are available for yourself. So that if you have your local CPA and that you're comfortable with him, great. Then you can take this and you can educate them and say, hey, have we thought about this? Why aren't we thinking about this? And if you get pushback, call us and we'll explain how to talk to them. So we put that together. It's over 4.5 hours of videos. Now, the thing about this is that whenever you talk to a qualified CPA, they're always going to ask, well, what's your authority? What forms? What's the IRC, the Internal Revenue Code provision that supports what you're asking of me? Now, you don't have to worry about that because Toby's already done it for you. He's lists all that out in the actual part of the tax toolkit. You're going to get every Internal Revenue Code that supports what it is we're doing, and you're going to get the forms that are necessary to file in order to claim those types of tax returns. And some of those forms are documents that need to be resolutions. So you have to paper the file. So if you get audited, it withstands audit. Because our clients, yes, they have been audited before, and we win those audits. That's why we offer audit protection on our tax side, because we know with our clients, we're doing things the right way to back up all the deductions that they're taking. So you're going to get all the documents, and then you're also going to get a digital workbook. Because some of us, we just don't like to watch videos. We absorb information in different ways, and he realized that. So rather than have it as a video, he wrote out a workbook. It's over 270 pages long. That's included in our tax toolbox. This will put thousands of dollars back in your pocket, just this information alone. On top of the tax toolbox, we want to make sure that bookkeeping is being done, that your affairs are being kept, or your books are being kept proper. So what do I mean by that? So one of the areas in which a lot of people run into issues with preparing their taxes is they don't understand how to create their books the right way. So what we're going to do for you is we're going to develop out a chart of accounts for you to show you, based upon your business, what that needs to look like. So you know what information you need to be tracking on a monthly basis or even on a weekly basis, because having good books and records will help you get things done. So you're going to gain access to our knowledgeable bookkeeping staff that are going to develop this out for you to help you get put on the right track. Because your books and records, your P&Ls and your balance sheets, that's what helps you get deals done, loans, that is. When opportunities come along, if you've neglected your books and records and you haven't been maintaining them, you will miss out. And I know this for a fact because with COVID and the CARES Act, where they had the EIDL loan and the PPP loan, look at how people already give me thumbs up because you're recognizing this as well, how important it is to have good books and records. We saw a problem. What we found is that people were struggling to gain access to these funds. They didn't know how to apply for the loan. So we created a funding department to help our clients get the money that the government was handing out. And so we created this funding department and we started going out there and applying for these loans. And it was really simple, the request that we had. Show us your P&L and your balance sheet and a tax return if you've been in business for more than 1 year. That's all we needed to get them money. And unfortunately, some people that were not working with us didn't have our virtual bookkeeping, didn't go through that to get their charge accounts. They didn't have anything to provide us. They would send in stuff that looks like this. Here, send this into the SBA and would you get me a loan for $50,000? I can't, because they're not going to accept that. And these clients, these individuals that provided us stuff on napkins, it just goes to show you, when an opportunity comes along, you have to be ready in a position to take action. You have to have that entity set up so you can make an offer in the name of your LLC. If you don't, and you're struggling, you're trying to get things done, many times you've already missed that opportunity. And so because of that, we said, hey, we need to do something to help people with their books and records. So we developed the bookkeeping department, and it's gone gangbusters. I can't even begin to tell you how many people are working in that department now with us. But it's designed to make sure that the books and records are set up right. And then the other aspect about that was funding. What we found out of COVID is that when that hit, people stopped loaning money. Banks quit loaning money to people, and our clients are investors. And so we realized that we had a big problem here for a lot of our clients. It was gaining access to loans, right? Especially the types of loans that we like to do, DSCR loans, where it doesn't take any of your you have to sign personal guarantees sometimes, or it's not Doesn't matter on how much income you're making. You know, it's based upon the property. There's a lot of lenders out there that are willing to loan people money. They're just getting started and their credit scores suck. I get it. You've been told you can't get a loan before because you don't have a 720 credit score. That's the traditional lenders. There are other lenders that don't operate that way. So we built out a funding department, and it's part of Anderson. It's going to be available to you here, where you're going to gain access to individuals that will help put you in touch with the lenders that we use for our own deals. And you're going to be amazed about this other side of financing, that if you're just used to working with brokers and they're telling you only can do things one way, now we'll find you money. We find money for our clients. On average, I think it's about $3 to $4 million a month our clients are obtaining in finance in this environment right now, right? So let me just show you some of the loans. Okay, George, $1 million for 2 real estate purchases. John, you got $101,000 for a business loan. So if you want to start a new business, I saw a lot of people thinking about starting new businesses. We can get you business loans as well. You don't have to be in business to get a business loan. Cash out refis, you know, rental property. Try to get a cash out refi from most lenders. They won't do it on investment property. We can show you lenders that will be willing to do cash out refis on rentals. Caesar, there, you got $2 million. Okay, yeah, that's a lot. Don't get your hopes up on $2 million. You got to have the equity in the property, of course. Real estate lines of credit on investment real estate doesn't happen very often. We know the people to contact. Money to buy real estate loans, cash out refis, business loans. Listen, our goal is to help you build a portfolio. And whatever we can bring to bear, the right structures, the right tax planning, the funding, we want to do that because we have experienced what true wealth building looks like through real estate and our clients, or building a business as well, or trading in the market. Toby and I have done all that, and that's the way our firm was founded, on those principles, is to give people the same opportunities that we've experienced and create the structures that allow them to get there. And so with our business essentials here, you're going to receive everything I just talked about there, the custom draft identity, the platinum program, the company assistance program. There's also some bonus items. We throw them in there, and that the entire value of this package today is $13,795. And I just want to tell you this, is that this is what we had a lot of clients pre-COVID when they started working with us. That's what their investment was to start with Anderson. And the people that I've shared with you some stories, and you've seen some videos there online, you know, during the breaks. All of those clients, a lot of those clients, when they started with us, they made this investment. Why? Because they recognize the value. They recognize that to move forwards, they needed to invest in themselves to go to that next level, and that we could help them get there. But then the world was thrown a curveball and things changed, and it changed our business model. We used to have to go out and put on 3-day events, and you would come to a 3-day event. So you would take 3 days out of your life to get this information. Now it's a little more in depth, of course, but it's expensive to put on events. So we'd go and rent a ballroom, and just to put on a 3-day event, be about $100,000. And you have to fly out staff, and we'd have 200 or 300 people there. And so our investment was such that, you know, these are the values, the prices that we had to ask to cover that. But then when COVID hit, we were able to transition to this type of communication. And I know it's not in person, and I do still like that. And we do still have events, occasionally like in-person events. But the point is that we recognized after about 3 months of doing this, we said, hey, there's 2 ways we can go. We can keep doing this same way. And yeah, we're gonna make a lot of money at it, of course. But there's another way, and that is, hey, let's recognize that people are in the same situation that we are. They're trying, some of them, you know, lost their jobs. Since we are saving so much money by not having to go out and do this, let's pass that on to our clients and those people that are looking to get started. So as a firm, we made a choice to pass on that value and asking for that. And we substantially have discounted it down because the savings we recognize, we're passing right back to individuals just like you who are taking time out of their day to be here with us today. And that's why the business essentials, to get started with it, it's $34.95 to start with that. And you're going to receive everything that you see in that package right there. it's a substantial savings, and it's done by this investment is going to help take your business. You're going to be working with us, and we're going to move it to a totally different place. Now, thanks for the hearts that are coming up. Before I show you how you can take advantage of this, I know there are people that are sitting on here right now and you're saying, well, is it just like Clint described? Is that exactly the way that it works with Andersen? And then you're going to think I'm biased, right? Because Toby and I started it. I get it. But I want you to listen to one of a client who was just in your position, okay, at one point in time and wondered, is this the way it is? And see his take. And once you do that, then I'll show you how to take advantage of this.
I had been doing flips, and I had set up my entities through another company, and I explained that to my brother, and so he did some research, and he actually found you guys online. And then he started sharing me with what you guys were doing and how your program worked. And I'm going, wow, that's way better than what I'm doing. And you guys, your products and the services and how you went in depth and making sure that the entities are set up correctly, so there's anonymity and protection. And I go, that other company didn't really, and they're really well touted, and they just didn't go through all that depth. And I'm going, well, maybe I'm not as protected as I thought. So then I did research on you guys. I go, they can't be that good. I mean, I thought I had the good ones, but of course my brother was right. And I said, well, I'm going to call and talk to these guys. So I called and talked to one of your people, and sure enough, they were saying the same thing that my brother was. I go, I got to check this out. Okay, I really need it. So I called again, and I went more in depth, and I just really kind of grilled you guys, and you came up with answers I've never heard of before, approaches, and it was, wow, this is so much better. I think I need to switch, and so I did.
Yeah, see, what George realized is that he needed someone in his corner looking out for him, and so do you. Someone who'll show you how to protect your assets from lawsuits and definitely reduce your taxes. And I can tell you from experience that individuals who fail to plan by not taking action rarely ever come out the other side of a lawsuit, or even as sometimes they say, an economic downturn, unscathed. We've seen that because we've been in business a long time. We've helped out quite a few people. And the cure we found in surviving the challenges that come up in life is taking action to preserve and protect what you've accumulated thus far and what you're going to be accumulating in the future in case something negative happens. And if you sit there at the crossroads right now and you're going, gosh, do I want to take action? Because you're possibly afraid that it may be a mistake moving forwards with the Business Essentials package. And I say, for some of you, that's one of the biggest mistakes is all, because never leave your financial security to the inability to make a decision. And I can hope you can understand what George was telling you, that protection and tax savings come from the decision to take action. It's a cure-all if done properly, and it can create momentum that will help take your business and your planning to a whole different level. And your opportunity to do that right now today is going to be as simple as just clicking on this link or taking this link down right here, going to this link that you see on the slide, and you go there. You're going to be able to sign up for the Business Essentials package. You're going to get everything that I described, and we're going to give you some other opportunities as well when you go there. Number one, I want to just cover this real quick. When you sign up for Business Essentials, this is only available to people who sign up for Business Essentials. There are two other things that you've heard me mention today. One was a living trust, and the other was our titanium service. Now, our living trust, what is that? That is an estate plan. And the living trust is normally $6,000 to set that up. All right. So that is an estate plan. Why? I tell you, it's the most important entity, because what you can do is you're going to put all your assets inside of there. And if something happens to you and you pass away, then those assets will be preserved for your children. It'll make sure that if they're involved in lawsuits or they go through a divorce, that ex-spouses are not going to get anything. You can even set it up, the way I've done with my planning, that the real estate. See, I believe in creating generational wealth. That's what I want to do, so that when I'm gone, 3 and 4 generations behind my wife and I are going to have something there for them. And I don't want anybody to sell it. I want it to be preserved and continue to generate income, because a lot of times people don't appreciate it that come behind us, that hey, this property is a ATM, and that, yeah, you may think you need to drive an S-Class Mercedes, but to tell you what, that depreciates and that's not going to be worth anything in 6 years. But that house will continue to be worth something as long as it's there. So you can create an estate plan that preserves all of those income generation assets, paying income out to family members forever, and the different ways you can set things up. I think it's critical. It's the most important piece, but it's the one that most people neglect. Well, when you sign up for Business Essentials, we're going to give you a substantial discount to get your estate planning in place. It's really important. It's one thing we realized coming out of COVID, life is fragile. And unfortunately, we had some people pass away that were close and dear to us here at Anderson, and they did not have an estate plan. You can't ever predict that, right? And we wouldn't want to predict it. And so we wanted to make sure that we've put something in place that protects our spouse, protects the people that we love, that in the event of our untimely passing, like one of our clients a year ago was killed on a motorcycle, right? And he did not sign his estate plan. And his wife was left with this mess to deal with. This is not where I want you to be, and that's why we're creating a very special opportunity. If you sign up for Business Essentials, you'll get a substantial discount on the Living Trust. Platinum, that's also there. Okay, so what is Platinum? It's normally $18K for Platinum. And here's what Titanium, excuse me, I misspoke, Titanium. But what is Titanium? Titanium is unlimited, limited liability companies. So with Titanium, if you become a Titanium client, then you have the ability for one investment. In this case, it's not $18K, huge discount. Okay, but if you know you need LLCs, you'll never incur another investment to set up an LLC. There'll never be another fee to set up additional LLCs. So all you gotta do is call us up and say, hey, I need another 3 limited liability companies in Wyoming, or I need 2 in Florida and 1 in New York, and we will set them up and you'll never incur that. People that are looking at Titanium, if you're an investor who is considering that you've got lots of real estate you need to protect, if you have existing LLCs, when you've heard me talking about going, man, my operating agreement doesn't have what he's in there, and I need all those operating agreements redrafted. If you're going to be flipping real estate, Titanium is the package for you. So what we've done here today, when you sign up for Business Essentials and you appreciate that you're going to be needing LLCs going forwards, you have that need currently, then I highly encourage you to take advantage of it, because with Titanium, we only have a limited number available. We have 11 available. That's it. And the reason why we have such few of these available, so we won't take everyone on, it's because we have to staff appropriately, because Titanium clients, they're our highest level here at Anderson. And so when you come in as a Titanium client, you need LLCs. They're getting expedited right out the door for you, because we understand you're doing business, you're doing it quick. And we're going to encourage you, hey, if you're going to be doing these deals, you should probably set a few up and just have them on the shelf. That's the way I operate. I always have 3 LLCs on my shelf that are created, ready to take action when a deal comes along. So that will be available to you as well at a substantial discount. And then you'll have one other option. If you realize you need Titanium and you need an estate plan, well, you can get both. And you'll see that there as well. If you look at that, you're like, wow, this is take advantage of everything Anderson has to offer. That's what we have available. So when you check out, but you can't get to that until you sign up for BE, because we only make this available to people who are Business Essentials. And again, it's our way of saying thank you for signing up and working with us and becoming a client. So great benefits there. The other thing I want to tell you is that for those of you that take action between now and when we come back from lunch, because this offer will be available all day. But if you see the value, you're ready to take action. Those of you that already did, I can see that right now on the chat that people are already signing up because we dropped the link there. You have something special for you. Everyone that's already signed up for Business Essentials, and those that continue before we come back from lunch, Toby and I are going to give you something else. Our way is saying thank you for taking action. We understand how important that is for you to take that step, to work with Anderson and trust us. We want to make sure that your personal residence is going to be protected. I told you the strategy. Now we're going to help you implement the strategy. We will provide to everyone that signs up today before we get back from our lunch break a residence trust. You'll receive a residence trust. That's a $1,500 value. Not only will we provide you the residence trust, we will give you a nominee trustee, meaning myself or Carter, an attorney, will serve as the trustee. So you have complete anonymity. That's a $750 value. And what good is a trust if it doesn't hold the property? We'll prepare your deed as well. Now, I can't do it in all states. There's 3 states we can't prepare it in. I apologize for that, but if we can, we'll prepare the deed. And that's a $450 value as well for that. So $2,700 in additional Anderson services we're including with this package. But you got to take advantage of it before we come back for lunch, and you'll get the residence trust as well. Now, people say, well, Clint, maybe I'm not ready for the residence trust right now. Doesn't matter. You sign up for Business Essentials before lunch. When you are, it doesn't expire. We will set it up. Because the way we work, okay, here at Anderson is that we want to build a long-term relationship with you. We want to continue to move forward with you as your investments move forward. We want to be there hand in hand to help you take advantage of what your work and hard effort are going to materialize into the future. And so by setting it up our business the way we have, where, you know, things like this don't expire, it's building the trust in our clients. And that's why, for example, when you sign up today, and let's say you have second thoughts about this next week, because what's going to happen is when you get signed up today, we're going to immediately reach out to you via email. Well, actually within the next day or so, reach out to you to get you a strategy session set up with us. So we're going to start the planning process as soon as possible with you to start building out that plan. So we'll be reaching out to you to do that. But if you have second thoughts and you decide next week, or when you sit down at the strategy session, you know what, maybe this isn't for me yet. I took action too soon. Don't worry. We will refund all your money. Because that's the right thing to do. We're not like some companies that say, oh, you've got 6 days or 3 days. And if you don't rescind within that time, it's too late. Anderson doesn't do that, because how do you build trust with someone? Now, at the same time, we will give you up to 30 days to cancel. Okay. So you got 30 days. So if you have a strategy session, you got to think about it. Don't worry about it. 30 days. And at the same, as I said, at the same time, understand that when we sit down with you and we have a strategy session, there will be a few people that we will meet with. It happens there all the time, that we find that we cannot help. That they said, oh, Clint, sounded so great, and I signed up for it. I get that. But then we sit there and we go, all right, there's nothing I can do for you right now. And in those situations, we're going to refund you. And sometimes people get mad. I just dealt with a client that was really irate because we refused to do business with them. And I kept explaining to him, I'm not doing business with you because I can't help you right now. And I just couldn't get through to them. I said, isn't that the honorable thing to do? To tell someone, I can't help you, so why are you paying me to do something that's going to be of no benefit to you and only benefit to me? I know there's companies that'll do that, but you're not going to find that here at Anderson, because Toby and I built the company on trust and working with clientele. And you can't maintain a company if that's what you do. And so that's why we've been around for as many years as we've have, for over 22 years. And that's why I've been so proud to be a part of what Anderson has become, because of our philosophy. And that's really why we're still here, and we're still working, and we're still doing what we do, because we want to see individuals like you find success like we have in life. And that's our motivation. Because, I understand with our real estate, some people say, well, why do you guys even work anymore? Not about that. It's not about the money. It's about helping people. And you're going to see that when you work with Anderson, that is our company philosophy. Hey, Toby, are you out there? Because I know you've been monitoring the questions, and I'd like to get some of those answered if you could jump on.
Absolutely. I want clarification that this is not an annual expense that you have to renew annually. There are, the platinum is $75 a month. And there's pieces that will have renewal opportunity depending on what you're using and how you're using them over time. But that was number one, that this is not an annual expense. This is a deductible expense. This was a big one. A bunch of people are asking, can I write this off? It depends on where you are in your investments as to whether it's a startup expense or if it's just an immediate write-off. either way, you're going to get to write it off 100%. Even if it's a startup, that we have a limit of $5,000 that we can write off immediately. This is well underneath that amount. There was two questions that I want to hit on. Number one, the platinum folks. There's some people that are already platinum, and they were wondering, what do I get if I sign up? And do I get a discount or anything? You don't get a discount, but if you are platinum already, you're going to get extra platinum. They'll go over that with you, but you're going to get an extra year platinum when you sign up. And then there's the people that are already business essentials, people that have already purchased a single entity but want to upgrade because they need another entity. There is a special link for you where the price is cut in half. So for those of you who are already titanium or business essential, go into the Q&A and say, I need the special link, I am titanium, or I need the special link, I am business essentials, because you get a break. Same thing is true as if you're business essentials and you're titanium and you want the living trust, because you probably already know what the price is. I'm not going to say it here, but it's a substantial discount. And you're like, I didn't do it the first time. Can I do it now? You can actually get that special link. So if you say, I am business essentials or I am titanium and I want the link for just the living trust, they'll send you a link so you can see what the price is and sign up for it. That's not for folks, like, you have to be business essentials in order to qualify for that discount. So that's it. Somebody says, how much is titanium? No monthly. Nope.
No monthly.
As long as you're platinum, you stay with titanium. So there's never, it's one of those things where the titanium is going to cover you for the LLCs. There's never going to be an extra cost. If you set up 100, it's still that one price. If you set up 100 over the next 10 years, still the same price. You just got to be a platinum member. We got to keep you on as a client so that we can keep doing it. Anything that I'm missing, because you saw a bunch of questions as well, I am sure. Was there anything you wanted to answer, Clint?
Somebody asked, hey, do you have to use us for taxes? Absolutely not. I mean, when you become a platinum client, we consult with you. If you want to bring your CPA on, we'll consult with your CPA. And so we're not trying to break relationships here. Some people oftentimes will say, well, what happens if I have my local attorney? Does that mean I can't work with my local attorney? Not at all. You still need a local attorney for certain things. But we're there on the business and the tax side to give guidance and to help move your investing forwards and move your business forwards. And so we work collaboratively with your existing professionals. We're not looking to break relationships because nothing good comes from that. We want to make sure that we have a team approach, because that's the way we work here at Anderson. We bring together a team approach that you're going to have access to when you're working with us. And so we extend that out. It doesn't have to be just within our ecosystem. It can exist in yours as well, and we all can work together.
Yeah, multiple questions about the tax department. We do have a full tax department. We do over 10,000 tax returns a year. We have a full bookkeeping department. It's very, very busy. Unfortunately, last year we had to turn it off for about, I think it was probably off just as much as it was on. So like when you get an opportunity to join the tax department, you join the tax department, because there's a lot of times when we can't. We just have to make sure we have the bandwidth. To train somebody in the Anderson way, just to give you guys an idea, it takes about 1.5 years. It's not an easy process, and it's very time consuming. We have full-time trainers that do that. So we're always trying to keep ahead of the curve and make sure that we have the personnel to handle the volume, and we don't take it if we can't do it. And I don't want to push that, because I don't want to see customer service drop because of volume. So yeah, you will see that there's times when you cannot sign up for tax services, but you just work with an advisor, communicate, see what's needed, and when that opportunity arises, you jump on it. But it is a one-stop shop. We all work together, the bookkeepers, the tax preparers, the attorneys, everybody works together.
Yeah, see, a few questions come up. People asking, hey, is there a time frame that I have to get all my entities completed by? There isn't a time frame, okay? Because I understand if you're busy, maybe you've got vacations planned. This one asks about a living trust. We should get your living trust before you go on the vacation if you're flying somewhere. But the point is that, hey, we'll work with you on your schedule. Now, we may be pushing on you on occasion. We don't want you to let this, fall back on the priority list, because as I stated, we've dealt with people before that will call us up where you can actually hear some process server knocking on their door. Yeah, I've been delaying getting this done. Can we get this set up now? So don't want to have those types of phone calls. So we'll keep you informed. Hey, we got to get moving on this, but there is no time limit.
Yeah, really good questions, by the way. By the way, we have a full team. I mean, I'm just looking at them right now with just Jen, Matthew, Renee, Tyson, Chris, Jonathan, Josh, Matt, Bill, Ashley, Valerie answering questions right now. Like, we have a large staff of attorneys and accountants and support staff answering your questions, and they've answered over 600 written questions thus far today. So if you have additional questions, put it in the Q&A. Comments, make sure you're sticking to chat. But if you have questions, we can see that you are asking the question. We can see what time you're asking the question. So if you're during the lunch hour, do not worry. We will make sure that we get to you. And, I know that the website gets just crashed during these things because everybody's trying to sign up at the same time. Stick with it. If you're communicating with us, we can see that, and we're not going to punish you. But that personal residence trust, that's a pretty big deal to have as a throw-in, and that is during this lunch. It's probably going to be a half hour, I think. What do you think, Clint?
30 minutes. Yep.
30 minutes. So 30 minutes, half hour, same thing. We're going to take a 30-minute break. Is there anything else you want to hit on?
I just want to say that, this afternoon, your eyes are going to be open to the tax saving opportunities. What Toby talked about, everything that we put together for you with our business essentials is tax deductible. He's going to show you how to do that. So over the next 30 minutes, get some lunch, get some fuel in your body, and then we're going to come back and we're going to take it to a whole different level, guys. You're in for a treat.
Yep, we're going to hit tax and legacy planning. So let's do 30 minutes. Clint, great job.
Thank you.
I show an emotion or emoji if you think Clint did a great job. I know he always says, "Oh, I don't like those emojis," but give him one. Give him a little heart. Give him some smiley faces.
Thanks, guys.
He needs some reinforcement, but he really did a great job of breaking this down. We always use customer stories, to explain that it's a human experience. It's not just hyperbole to us. It's not just theory. It's not out of a book. It's stuff we do day in and day out and been doing for 25 years. Great job explaining the benefits of using anonymity to protect yourself. Great job of explaining how to structure things the appropriate way so you can actually grow and you don't have somebody take it away from you. That's the big one. A lot of people will say it's easy to make money, it's hard to keep it. Well, we're going to make sure that you're keeping it. And this afternoon, we're going to really nail down how you can keep more of it through the tax savings and how you can pass it on in the legacy planning. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Thank you very much.
30 minutes, guys. We'll see you back here.
Investing Whether you are a novice real estate investor or a seasoned professional, the way you structure and manage your company will impact the taxes you pay and how much wealth you'll preserve for your family. From tax advisors to lawyers, there are experts who can guide you to use the tricks and avoid the traps to successfully navigate the U.S. real estate market.
When people start investing, they look at themselves as an investor and they don't see themselves.
Exciting. In fact, tax code really, it's not that long. It's maybe 10,000 pages, about the same size as Game of Thrones. It's just written like in poetry. So you got to drink a bottle of wine before you read it. And then it's interpreted in about 1 million pages called the regs and the in case law. So nobody really knows it. What we do know is about 10% of it is telling us what the taxes are. And about 90% is telling us how to avoid paying those taxes. So we're going to pay a lot more attention to that 90% than that 10%. So let's dive in. So let's say that there's you and me up here. Here's our individuals. And the tax code is written for us kind of like this. You earn money, then you pay taxes on that money, and then you spend what is left. Does that make sense? Hey, I go work at McDonald's. I remember working at McDonald's. I got $4.15 an hour, and I thought I was going to, if I worked 40 hours, I thought I'd make $160. What does it actually look like? You guys remember your first paycheck, and you looked at it and you go, what's this OADSI? What's this Medicare? Who's this SUDA and FUTA? And why'd they take all my money, right? There's all these other taxes that are taken out of it, employment taxes and federal withholding, and that's this little side right here. And when we add up all the employment taxes and the federal taxes, the average is right around 30%. So I'm just going to put 30%. So I'm going to show you how this works. For us, let's say that, does anybody here have kids that you have to put through school? You're paying for expenses for children, or even it could be an adult. Give me a thumbs up if you're doing that. Maybe you're sending somebody to school. Maybe your parent paying something for a sibling or a parent. And you're like, oh man, it stinks. I have to pay for their tuition or something like that. Maybe it's even their high school expenses, clothes, you just name it. So let's just say that we need to spend, we'll make it pretty inexpensive. We need to spend $10,000. If we just do kind of our simple math, and I'm just going to say a third, if we do our simple math, that means that we're going to have to pay taxes of about $5,000 on $15,000 so that we can spend $10,000. Now, here's the difference between a business. Businesses earn money, then they spend it, and then they're taxed on what is left. Notice that little difference. Hey, is there any way that I could convert something that I'm spending money on into a business expense? That should be the question you always ask, especially if you're getting into real estate and things like that. And one of the number one things we could do is, let's go back to our friends, the kids, and we say, what if we pay our kids the $10,000? Can the business pay my kids $10,000 and have them pay for that expense? What do you guys think? Can you do that? Absolutely. There's kids 9 years old in court cases getting paid Screen Actors Guild fees for posing to be on marketing for mom and dad's business. In a real estate business, what kind of things could a child do for that business? Could they be looking at listings? Could they be crunching data? Could they actually be doing your social media? Could they be handling anything that's tech? Because God knows I suck at tech, right? All these kids could be doing that. And if you paid them $10,000, do you know how much tax they pay on that? Here's a hint. Your standard deduction is $13,850. Which means the kids don't have any tax on that. So their tax rate is zero. This is called income shifting. We do it all the time. They would pay zero income tax, which means if they have to spend $10,000, your business only has to earn $10,000. And that's a $5,000 tax savings on an annual basis. And if you're saying, well, my kids are grown and things like that, okay, great. But you could still do the same principle. It may not be that they're in the tax free, but if you're providing any assistance to anybody, and it's being done at your tax bracket, you should be asking yourself, is there a way that I can pay them for something and instead let it be taxed at their bracket instead of mine? I don't care whether it's parents, siblings, or anybody. You want to make sure that you're transitioning that. Let me give you another one. Is that worth something to some of you guys? Give me a little thumbs up, give me something to let me know that we're going down the right path. You guys like little nuggets like that. To me, those are little gold nuggets, and I'll pick them up and I'll keep them in my pocket. And if there's ever a situation, by the way, you can do that with a corporation too. Corporations flat tax 21%. If I'm sitting at the highest bracket and I'm in a state like California, maybe I'm at 37% federal and 13% state, or New York or Maryland or Connecticut. And